I would like to call this meeting, Thursday, July 25th, Community Services District open. And I would like you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Thank you. And I'd like to mention that Mr. Thompson, the president, isn't available today. He's away on family business. And otherwise, we have a quorum. And do we have a report, Mr. Hirsch, a report from closed session?
My understanding is that the items on the closed session from the last meeting were not held and continue to this meeting, so there would be no report.
Okay, thank you. Could I then have a Sheriff's Department report? Do we have a member from the Sheriff's Department today? Seeing none, I'll put that aside. And a Fire Department report? Captain?
Good afternoon, Mr. Acting President and members of the board. Forgive me if I'm a little discombobulated. I just had ISO in my office since 8:30 this morning, going through everything with a fine-tooth comb. So, you have my monthly stat sheet there, which outlines a lot of the prevention education hours and our run statistics and stuff. We had two significant fire events last month, one of them being a structure fire at the Blue Whale Inn on Saturday, June 29th. We were able to get on top of that fire and take care of it very quickly. With a little bit of fortunate event happened there. It happened to be a skylight, a 4-foot by 4-foot plastic skylight above where the fire origin was, and it was able to burn that out and vent and contain the fire in one general area. So that saved a lot of dollar loss that we may have had with that. So we got a little lucky. On July 6th, we had fire crews that responded, mutual aid with CAL FIRE, with our water tender up into the Adelaida area. They had a fire that was threatening one of the vineyards up there, and we're able to get up there and get a stop on that. And our water tender was out for, I think, about 10 hours on that fire. So I mentioned ISO. We're currently going under review for our fire service capability in the community, which has implications for the fire insurance in town. I feel very optimistic that with the improvements in the water system and improvements in the fire department since the last review period, that we may get a lower rating, which is a better rating, which would reduce some of the fire insurance premiums and stuff for folks in the community. So we'll see. That'll play out for probably the next month or two before we'll find out what our grade was on that. We're completed with the inspections on the weed abatement, fire hazard fuel reduction program, and have the hearing on that today. We were able to whittle down the list. We had a list that's in your packet that shows 106 parcels. We've got that down now to about 65. We were able to work with the contractor to try to alleviate having folks get penalized and go to contract by virtue of setting up a contract with the local contractors to get that done on a more reasonable, ongoing, collaborative type of basis. So with that, that's about all I have. If there's any questions that you might have, or
I have one quick question.
Okay.
The ISO meeting that you had, is that a surprise, or is that something that's been planned for a period of time?
They called, and I was telling General Manager Gruber, they called, and I said, we have a million irons in the fire right now. Can I postpone for a month or two? And they said, this is no big deal. We're just going to come up and have a quick meeting. I said, well, I can squeeze you in before our board meeting. It'll only be an hour or two. We're just going to kind of outline what we're going to look for and how it's going to play out. And then when we got there, I had put together a lot of the stuff that I knew that they would be looking for, and it kind of fueled their fire to the point to where they thought maybe they could complete the whole study today or 90% of it. So it got a little intense. And I don't know whether it was my fault or theirs, but it was a little bit unexpected. So hopefully it turns out well. So,
Good. Well, thank you for your efforts.
thank you.
I got a couple of questions, Chief Miller. before
Director
you
Rice?
go. Just had a question about the status of administrating the CCHD and about whether we've got any further on working with the Sheriff's Department to get them a desk in the Fire Department.
I'll start with the Sheriff's Department. I kind of have the idea that that is not something that's going to work out real well for them. They have a situation set up at Station 10, and they have the volunteer sheriff vehicle there, and I received a note that requested that if they were to consider moving, that they would have to bring that equipment over and park it there and a bunch of things. I never got the feel that they were really interested in making the move, and we, at the same time that was going on, we had the uncertainty of whether or not the merger was going to happen with the healthcare district, which would have changed the dynamics of the office space there. And we kind of tried to play it out long enough to see which way we were going to go with it, and then I got a note from the sheriff saying that they didn't want to consider moving to the station. The shared services effort is continuing. I have stepped down as the interim administrator for the healthcare district. When the two districts originally agreed to have me be the interim administrator, I think it was kind of under the pretense that it would be something that we would be able to bring together in a fairly short period of time, and as it has played out, there are some hurdles there in bringing the two agencies together that are going to be a little longer than we thought, and to do no disservice to the healthcare district, it's better that I step out and that they look for a full-time administrator to run it. We still have the same dedication to trying to do the shared services project, and we're working toward that. It's just going to play out for a little longer.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Yes, Chief Miller, just one other thing then, since it's changed that the Sheriff's Department won't have a kind of a off-site little office at our fire department. They do remain then where, at CAL FIRE?
They have an office at CAL FIRE Station 10 on Weymouth.
Right, okay.
And they're not there all the time. It's not like it's a fully staffed office, but it's a report writing area that they have, and that they come there whenever their sheriff's in the area and they need to do paperwork and that type of a thing.
Okay, so it's more for paperwork. It's not like a kind of a drop-by thing? I mean, you could take your chances if they were there, certainly.
Yeah, I don't think that they have a regular schedule that they're there. I think it's kind of when they're here and they have a need to pull in to do their paperwork and their reporting stuff that they
Okay,
that
so
they
just
go.
more of a place to work.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Chief. Next on the agenda, we have acknowledgements and presentations, and I have a proclamation recognizing the Rotary Club of Cambria and the Rotary Club of Cambria Sunrise Centennial for the sidewalk and landscaping improvements at the Veterans Memorial Building. And I would like to ask Mike Griffin and Linda Finley to join me at the podium. But without that being said, certainly Mr. Sanders should be involved in the photo op for sure, because I know that Greg was instrumental in starting this whole thing off the line. So I'll read this at the podium if Mike and Linda, if I could meet you there. Where would you like? Over here, maybe? Okay. We'll have Mike and Linda over here. Yeah. And I haven't read this yet. I just got them in a few minutes. So if I stumble, please, I have one of these proclamations for each of you. But I'll read this to you. The Cambria Community Service District proclamation commending the Rotary Club of Cambria and the Rotary Club of Cambria Sunrise Centennial. Whereas the Rotary Club of Cambria and the Rotary Club of Cambria Sunrise Centennial conducted a joint project for the Cambria Veterans Memorial Building parking lot landscaping project, and whereas the total project cost was over $21,000, the Rotary District 5240 provided a $2,000 grant towards the project. Randy and Nancy Flam, owners of IQMS, Logic in Paso Robles, and the Cambria Pub and Steakhouse contributed $10,000 to the Rotary Club of Cambria for this project. The balance came from fundraising activities of the two Rotary clubs. And whereas Shana McCormick, owner of Great Gardens, contributed many hours and much talent to the project on a volunteer basis, and whereas John Patterson, owner of John Patterson Construction Company, provided materials at cost for an unanticipated extension of the fence that was constructed as part of the landscaping project, and whereas Supervisor Bruce Gibson and San Luis Obispo County Public Works worked closely with the two Rotary clubs to construct the sidewalk adjacent to Main Street before the landscaping was installed, and whereas all residents and visitors to Cambria have benefited from the generosity and true community support and service of the Rotary Clubs of Cambria. Now, therefore, by virtue of the authority vested in me, standing in as president of the Board of Directors, and behalf of the entire board, CCSD staff, and all Cambrians, on this day of July 25th, 2013, we hereby honor and commend Rotary Clubs of Cambria with this proclamation of public recognition, extending to them our appreciation for the beautiful landscaping project and best wishes for continued success in all their future endeavors. On behalf of Mike Thompson, President, Board of Directors. Thank you. And one for you. And could we get Greg up here for part of the photo op? And Greg was very instrumental, along with many others, and Bob Casper also, that were very instrumental in making things happen here.
No, you're fine.
Is it good?
Those of us who aren't that tall don't have to worry about that. One more, in case somebody blinked or saw. Hi, Jim, it's cooperating. It's electronic, what can I tell you? Good.
Thank you. And Kathy, if you get a chance to have some of these members right in front of the actual structure, I think that would be a fantastic thing for the Cambrian.
Yeah, that's what I'm.
Jim?
Matter of fact, guys, why don't we turn that there? I'll be right back. Do anything exciting now.
This is another public comment.
For regular public comment?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. And now we have two requests to speak from the public. This is to be comments on things that are not on the agenda. And we have two wishes to speak. Catherine Hyde, followed by Tina Dickerson.
Thank you. I had a little trouble figuring out if this was specifically related to 9B. And I'm wondering now when you say
It isn't, this is just for things that are not on the agenda. I certainly will move this over to 9B.
Okay,
It might be more appropriate.
let's do that, thank you.
Okay, I'll do that. Ms. Dickinson. Dickinson, sorry.
Tina Dickinson, Cambria. Good afternoon, Board. A couple of things. The Cambrian today has misrepresented my activity in the past regarding water increases. It says, and I quote from today's Cambrian, "And Tina Dickinson, a regular commenter at board meetings who was a leader in opposing the last round of district rate hikes as initially proposed, began circulating a petition. I did not oppose the last rate increase. I began protests on the 2007 and 2008, which we successfully protested under Prop 218. I did not oppose the last round. That was a successful rate increase, and General Manager Gruber, I understand that at the Lions meeting from a friend who attended, that you also believed that we did not have a rate increase. We did indeed have a rate increase. So I just want to clarify that if there's any confusion. The other item that I would like to bring to your attention is I have, as of last Monday, July 15th, started a petition. This is the sheet. This is what it looks like. It holds 16 signatures per sheet. This is a petition for Cambrians' right to water, those who already have connections and who are paying. And it says, "We, residents of Cambria, California, by signing this petition, do declare our objection to the Cambria Community Services District's proposed action of issuing intent to serve letters. Cambria continues to be in a water shortage emergency, Water Code 350. While Cambria's water usage is increasing, attention also needs to be paid to the fact that we are in a drought year, having received just over 10 inches of rain this rainfall season. The CCSD's proposed action for further development is putting residents at risk by jeopardizing our diminishing water supply even further. The CCSD has a legal obligation to its residents to supply a safe and reliable source of water." I will comment much later when this comes up in the agenda, but I just want you to be aware that there is a petition circulating in the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your clarification there. With no other public comment, we'll review the agenda. Any additions, deletions, or pulled consent items, directors? If not, then we'll move on to, I can't believe it, manager's report, and it's only 5 to 1. Well, do we approve? We don't have to approve the agenda. If there are no additions or deletions, no, okay. So we'll move on to the agenda, the manager's report.
Thank you, Vice President Berenger. I do want to take a few extra minutes on my report. I think the last couple months I've kind of breezed through it, and I think it's important that I do take a couple extra minutes just to show all the important and good things that the district is doing. And so let me start with my general manager's report. One of the things I do want to do after I'm done presenting some of the reports is go back to the format of having the district engineer not necessarily discuss things for a long period of time, but one of the issues that we do need to monitor, and we want to let the board and the community know that we're monitoring that, is our well levels. I see well levels up there right now. We're not ready for that. If you could put me back on the screen, not that I want to be on television or anything like that, but I just don't want well reports up there when I'm trying to go over some important information. So my second bullet item, my staff report says staff continues to evaluate compliance-related matters relating to the Water Department and working closely with State Water Resources Control Board on addressing matters that were inadvertently overlooked by previous staff. So as I discussed previously with the board, is that some of the sampling that was required to do, that we missed those, and we did catch up on some of those samplings. But when you have a change in management, change in staff, change in supervision, you want, one of the things that I asked the staff to do was a compliance audit, and that's just to take all the documentation and review it and look it over, and that's essentially what I mean by this. And so I think it's important as our water supervisor transitioned out of the organization, and we have a new utility manager now, that we don't assume that everything that we've been doing in the past is necessarily the right way to do it. And sometimes there's transitions with staff at state level. Sometimes there's differences in reporting criteria. We're finding out that because of state cutbacks, there isn't always an open line of communication between the state and the different districts and cities. And so we need to be proactive in reaching out and making sure that the forms that we're filling out are actually the forms that need to be filled out and things like that. So that's what I meant by that statement. I want to spend a couple minutes on my fourth bullet statement. Staff met with representatives from the California Environmental Protection Agency, State Water Resources Control Board, and the California Regional Water Quality Control Board regarding 3 sanitary sewer overflows. We've referred to those in the past as SSOs that occurred on January 2nd, 2011, October 6, 2011, and then the third one occurred in December 17th of 2011. Additional dialogue between the above-mentioned state agencies and the CCSD are ongoing, and I'll keep the board apprised regarding any future meetings that will occur. All the agencies referenced above were pleased with the improvements to the infrastructure, policy, and procedures that the CCSD has made and continues to make regarding addressing sanitary sewer overflows. So with that being said, we had a series of questions that the state asked us about those sanitary sewer overflows and what we were doing regarding them, and this was our response to them. Staff, district engineer, myself, the wastewater department worked really hard on putting this together. The result of this was a meeting with them, and then there's ongoing correspondence between the CCSD and the agencies that I referenced. And there's some additional clarification that they need, and we're compiling that information now, and we're giving it to them. And so two really crucial documents that are important to what the district is doing is the SSMP, which is a sanitary sewer management plan. And I just want the board knows, but I want the community to know that we have a very comprehensive sanitary sewer management plan. But this management plan was done by APT Water, and one of the reasons it was done by a consultant is because we were past due and we needed to get it done. And as we look at it, it's a living and green document, and it needs to be continuously updated and improved. And that's what we're doing. We're making it a document that we can reference, that we can implement into our daily activities in the wastewater treatment plant. A sub part of this SSMP, Sanitary Sewer Management Plan, is a FOG program, which is fats, oils, and grease. I know I'm throwing a lot of acronyms at you. We have a comprehensive FOG, oil, and grease program, and we've never had one in the past, and so why is that important? Fats, oils, and grease, we have about 40, 45 kitchens in town, and it's important that we make sure that we have the necessary apparatus in place to capture that grease so it doesn't go down the sewers. Later on, I'll talk about the CCTV testing and what's going on there. So our FOGs, oils, and grease program that we have implemented is constantly being improved, and this was also done by APT, but now it's going to be a homegrown effort, and it's going to be our document, and it's going to be ongoing and green and continuing to evolve, if you will. The staff's reviewed the draft Cambria Community Services District's water and wastewater capacity fee study by Botter Wells. I did forward that to Director Cliff today because he wanted some information on that, and we have it in a draft form. It's almost ready to go. Our plans were to bring it today for connection fees, but there was some minor changes that need to be done regarding the depreciation of our fixed assets. And so that'll be coming to the board in December, or I'm sorry, in August, not December. Demand management measures for our water efficiency program. We've put a series of demand management measures together that we think would be the best use of our resources, which is our financial resources and our staff resources. We went 6 months out. We didn't do the whole fiscal year. And then that comprehensive list will be sent to the Conservation Committee, and the Conservation Committee can have a chance to weigh in on it and see if those are the demand management measures that we want to implement. The RBF, the rodeo grounds, we've got some preliminary drawings for that, and I think Bob is going to cover where we are in that process as part of his permit. Now, ProPipe, you've seen trucks all throughout town, and what they're doing is they're cleaning and videotaping our sewer lines. Well, when the system was built in 1979, thereabouts, we had 25-foot easements everywhere throughout town, including in some of the canyons along the creek beds. And what's happened over a period of years is those easements have slowly been overgrown by vegetation to the point where we didn't know where a lot of our manholes were. We thought we knew where most of them were, but we didn't. So, for an example, as you drive over Windsor, drive over the bridge right there on Windsor, you'll see an area cleared away where we found one. If you drive down Highway 1, you'll see an area relatively close to the creek, but not on the creek, an area cleared away that we found one. And what's happened is when we get floods, that manhole in particular was in really bad shape and leaked. And so when the creek rose, we got inundated with creek water, and that significantly contributed to our I&I concerns, intrusion and infiltration that caused some of these SSOs that we've had. So we're identifying those and resolving those. And now the next thing we need to do is we did a change order, and we're doing areas in areas that we feel may be flooded out and cause these manholes to overflow. There's an area adjacent to Highway 1 you can see right before Air Force Housing and on the East Ranch, and we coordinated with FFRP and Caltrans and County Land Conservancy, and we went in there and cleared an area out, and we had to go in there with hand tools and equipment and clear the area out all the way up Highway 1, that area right there, and found them all with metal detectors, and we went in there and cleaned and videotaped all those. So essentially, they're almost like archaeological finds. We're returning our infrastructure. I think what I'd like to see is all of our manholes reestablishing that 25-foot easement that we originally had so we can get to them, and I think that's a goal as long as we continue to be environmentally sensitive while we're doing it, and we don't just go in there and clear cut everything. I'll continue on. The finance manager's report is on page 9, and I'm just going to kind of breeze through the rest. Page 11, as of June 30th, 2013, we have $4,839,064 in reserves, and as you can see, since 2009, that figure continues to go up, other than in 2011 where there was a slight dip. And so we're looking pretty good there. Chief Miller already went over his fire prevention report. I appreciate Chief for doing that. The utility manager's report, I'm going to have the utility manager attend the meetings from here on out. I think he's a key player in the management team and can provide you guys with a lot of good information. But he's on vacation this week. He's spending some time with his daughter, so I just want to go over just a few things in his utility manager's report. I had made the statement that when Mike took over the water department, we'll start seeing a lot more things in the water department getting done. We had two major breaks that the staff did really well on resolving together. When I say together, there was water and wastewater personnel out there directing traffic, and that's because they are centralized in one location now. There's not the water department at the rodeo grounds and the wastewater department at the wastewater treatment plant. They're combined now, and they're essentially utility departments. So when something major does happen, like a water break, they can all mobilize together and help each other out. Just a few other things that I'll go over really quick. About halfway down the page, you'll see that it said installed new chlorine injection system at San Simeon Well. Well, big deal. Why is that so important? We were injecting chlorine down into the well casing before, which is you can do that, but it's not the best way for disinfectant into the distribution system. So now we've hooked it up where the chlorine is injected on the effluent side of the discharge side of the well, instead of putting it down in the casing of the well, which is just better all the way around. And we've changed the codes on all of our locks, and we've done that for Homeland Security reasons. We keep the old rodeo grounds locked now at all times, and that code gate is locked. Before it was open. think it's important that we keep it locked and keep our facilities secured. All of our tanks and all of our water wells and things like that need to be secured, so people just can't wander in there anytime they want. Mike talks about hydro-cleaning again. We can go to Carlos's report on page 17. You can see that he's working on fire breaks, and he's working on weed abatement. He's doing a really, really good job. We had 47 events last month held at the Veterans Hall, so you can see that this facility is used quite a bit. The foyer out here, the wallpaper was taken down. It was, I don't know if you noticed when you walked in, it was repainted. We'll be redoing the flooring out here and putting some lights in and make it look a little bit nicer as you walk in. And Vice President Berengal, you'll be happy on this one. We're working with San Luis Obispo Integrated Waste Management, and we have applied for a grant on behalf of the district. If successful, the grant will provide new trash cans and recycled containers. And they're really nice looking. They're one combined can, and they're just really, really sharp looking. The water yard, if you get a chance to go down to the water yard now, it is now the Facilities and Resources Department. And what they've done is they took out about 15 yards of waste. They redid the bathrooms. They redid the kitchen. And they redid both of the outlets down there. And, I'm sorry, both of the offices. Eventually that facility will be pressure washed and cleaned and painted and the roofs repaired and those old blue tanks taken out of there. So it's going to be aesthetically a lot nicer looking. On page 19 is the Administrative Services Officers Report. That's Monique Madrid. IAFF contracts are coming up pretty soon, and that'll be an agenda item later on in the meeting. That's the International Association of Firefighters. There was a one-year agreement. Their contract is up in December. And everybody's talking about the Affordable Health Care Act right now, the ACA, and how is that going to impact the organization. And we are, Monique and one other staff member is attending a three-part series through webinar. They don't have to leave work. And we're finding a lot of good information that will be applicable to the organization and how that's going to impact us, not just from an HR perspective, but financially also. We've given out 711 shower heads and 752 aerators. And we have 8,311 points in our points bank right now. That points bank has been reconciled. It's accurate. And if you were to take $50 per point, it comes out roughly to about $415,550. If you were to take that 100 points per house or 120 points per house, that average, with the current points bank, it would allow us to issue 69.2 intent to serve letters. So it represents about 69.2 houses. Not that I just thought I'd throw that figure out there. Courtney Updegrove is our conservation specialist. She's doing a really good job. Before, the water department would do inspections, and they would do the best they could, but she's doing them now, and she's spending about half her time out of the office, out in the field. And it's generating revenue for the district. She's finding when she goes out and does inspections that there was a sink added here or a sink added there that maybe we didn't catch before. And so the results of that are writing us a check for it. And I think that's really the important part in helping everybody understand that if we find something out there that wasn't originally proposed, that you're going to be charged for it, and that helps fund our conservation program. I know that's a lot of information to cover, but I just thought I would take a few extra minutes to go over some of it. And again, once I answer the board's questions on all this information, then I'd like to have Bob just take a few minutes. And we've put a PowerPoint presentation together for our well graphs. I think we all agree that our well graphs will continue to evolve and improve, but I think we need to start communicating to the board and to the public where our well levels are right now. And also, just a little bit of information about what his activities are and what he's doing without spending a lot of time on beating him up or the Army Corps of Engineers. So, but with that, I'll answer any questions that the board may have at this time.
Are we going to have that before we have the presentation?
Well, if you would like, you can answer any questions on the information that I just covered, if that's okay, and then Bob can do his presentation, or however.
Right,
however.
I think that would be appropriate. We'll ask questions from the board to you.
Okay.
And then we'll have Bob give his presentation, but we have 3 requests to speak on 6A. So let's do it in that order. The board to Mr. Gruber, then Bob's presentation, then we'll go directly to the public. So does the director have something? Mr. Cliff?
Yes, and this is just a statement for public and for the board, is that I was disappointed in the fact that the rate study was not completed. And I understand there is a draft out, and that I would expect at the next meeting that we would be prepared to approve the rates, rates on the connection fees. I think it's a matter of getting the steps done that need to be done before any actions are taken, and that I understand there's some minor glitches, and I'm not overly concerned that it has to be exactly perfect, because we don't know what perfect is and until we get into the system. But we got to get at least that level started. So I would be very disappointed if it's not here next time.
We'll take it. Ms. Robinette, do you have anything? No?
I have a couple of things. First thing is, a couple of months ago, we got a report that the hotels had been audited for water use, and I haven't seen any results, data, or anything, even at the ad hoc water conservation committee level. And I would like to, because I know we do have, it would be nice to know those things. I'd also like to say that the important thing for me as a board member, when we find something out in the field that they've added something, it isn't just the money, it's making sure that we are covered so that we can pay for any retrofits that need to be done. And hopefully they've already, if it's a sink, for example, they've already got an aerator on it, because it isn't about the money is a means to an end, and it's not that we're just collecting money. I also I appreciate that you gave some alternate ways of looking at what those points mean to the district and the points bank. I'd also like to add one to that list, which is that 8,311 points in the points bank it equates to about 13 acre feet. And that can make that makes a difference, because that is a fairly significant amount of the water that we use in a year. On the administrative office report, I just wanted to, this is page 19, I just wanted to make sure that when you look at the people's self-help housing plans again, you take note that one of the rooms is a community room, and it does have a full kitchen in it. And when we approved 40 EDUs for that project, I thought there were 40 units, we gave them 40 EDUs, but there were 40 units plus what is essentially amounted to a whole nother unit with 2 bathrooms, male and female, and a kitchen. So I just want to make sure that we have that. I mean, it was that we have the right number of EDUs are associated with that project when it comes back redesigned. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gruber, I just have a few comments, and probably the most important one is that you're talking about evaluating compliances that were overlooked by previous staff, and the fact that you're putting the policies and procedures at the CCASD addressing sanitary sewer overflows, and the fact that you have a plan, but now you have a plan that's a living and green document. And I really think that's a credit to you. I think in previous years in Cambria, people weren't as proactive. They weren't hands-on. They weren't on the street. And I just want to comment that that's what you need. You don't need a plan that sits on a shelf. You need a plan that's actually working. And I'm very encouraged to hear you say that. The 2 other quick things. I know we're getting those new waste waste trash containers. But I think it'd be important that if we do get a grant for that, that we have someone, maybe not us, maybe some citizens, and I have a few people in mind that I might ask to help. There's a couple of places where the trash cans overflow all the time, and I know we've tried to get the owner of the French bakery to be a little bit more proactive, but they're not a chamber member, as I understand. But we might have to put multiple units in, get a couple extra units to make sure we don't have those overflows on weekends. That and Upper Bridge Street are two places where we only had one in the past. Those were the big eyesores, so maybe doubling up in those areas might be smart. But maybe the NCAC or some members of the public, if anybody's listening to this and they have some input, that would be great. Because I do think that grant's going to come through. You mentioned the fact that we're relocking all the gates, and it's just a comment, but I notice when I go on the East Ranch, or East-West Ranch, and there's a, there's a gate up on Huntington that has a lock on it, and it's a fire. It's for people to drive through in case there's a fire, but there's locks on it, and I was wondering if there can be kind of a breakaway lock or something on that, because if there's an emergency and a neighbor, or the neighbor should know the combination or somehow, that should be known where people can actually open up those fire gates. It's not appropriate on the East Ranch like you're talking about, or on your yards, but there should be combinations that people know, or breakaway locks or something for an emergency. And the last thing is, it was early last month, I think, that we had on page 16, they're talking about major leaks. And I know we had some major leaks on different places, but on Brighton. But when the fire hydrant was lost, water was streaming out of there probably for 6 or 8 hours. I mean, it was a long water break, and I wonder if we can measure or quantify how much of that water was there. I mean, coming out of a 6-inch or 8-inch hole, we could probably measure I would think you could measure the tank levels at the beginning and end of that, but that's a significant amount of water. And next month or the month after, you're going to be showing usage, and that's, I think, is going to show up on a usage report. So I'd be interested next month to see if we can get an idea of how many EDUs that would have been streaming out that night. Other than that, I don't have any comments. And if no other director does, I do have 3 requests for comment. And in order of receipt, Ms. Bettenhausen?
Did you want?
That's right. I'm sorry, Ms. Bettenhausen. We're going to do Bob's report. That'll give you some more ammunition, or some more things to comment on.
And Vice President Berenger, if I could just really quickly, and I just, Director Cliff, you're absolutely right. I accept full responsibility on not having that connection fees, and it will be here. It will be here in October. The hotel audits that Director.
August.
You mean August?
August.
Did I must
said
have
October.
Christmas on my mind or something. I'm just.
Just to see if we were listening, and we were.
In August.
October was better than
Yeah.
December.
Well, we'll have it next month, or I won't be sitting here. So, the hotel audits. I'll be honest with you. I don't have a level of confidence that they were done in a manner that would represent what really needs to be done there. So I think that we need to go back in the hotels. We need to have training first, and we need to make sure that we have trained staff to do it, and we make sure that we have the proper equipment and resources to do it. So I'll keep the Conservation Committee up to date on that. And when Courtney is going out in the field, I absolutely agree with you. It's not just about money, but again, I have a better level of confidence that we're now doing those retrofit inspections on a higher level, where before we tasked the water department to do it, and they were running in and out between breaks and things like that, and maybe they so we're doing a better job on that, and we're being more conscientious. So
Could you elaborate a little bit on the training? That certainly is an important thing and will really add to the credibility of an audit. But I think, in fact, we have staff that's been involved lately in some training that's going to really benefit the department.
right, so conservation specialist is it's not just a title. It requires a lot of training, and part of the training is to do audits. And most water agencies, there is a iPad, and there's an application that's used, and it's a relatively simple process to go through, but you need to have the necessary software to do it. And then at the very end of the inspection, it prints out a really nice pie chart and shows you where your water is being consumed, its irrigation. So all those things are in the works, and the training that's necessary. And training is ongoing, and Courtney's going down to San Luis Obispo and getting additional training on outside irrigation and those things like that. So as the position becomes new, I think it's important that we also have the necessary training that's in place, because the results of those inspections are only as good as the people that are doing them and the training that they have. And we've talked quite in length about validating a process, and I think by having a certified person do those inspections with the necessary training, it only bolsters our ability to say and validate the process of these inspections. And so going back to Director Rice's question about the hotels, I would like to be able to just take the time, we're not in such a hurry that we can't go back in and evaluate those and work with the different work with the different communities and things, or different hotels. Going back to Director Rice's question about people's self-help, definitely when we review those plans, we'll do two things to see if that room was captured that you're referring to, that community room, and to make sure that there isn't any amendments to the change that the board approved. The board put specific conditions upon that project relating to conservation. So we want to make sure that those things are occurring. Director Berenger, I appreciate your comments about having a plan. I appreciate the board's support on hiring additional staff. The waste cans, I think there's a fairly easy solution, but it's a matter of working with the community and maybe the chamber and things like that. Honestly, Carlos is probably going to shoot me right now, but if it's only 2 trash cans or 2 businesses that aren't, you know, how much effort would it take for our guys to run by and throw them in the back of the truck? I mean, but we don't want to get into emptying all the trash cans along the Main Street, because he shared a concern with me that would be almost a full-time job. On Huntington, the break, you're absolutely right. There's larger issues, I think, than determining the amount of water. And it will raise our unaccounted water for up. You'll see that our unaccounted for water is slightly higher than it was in the past, and we contribute that to those 2 breaks. But being able to respond in a timely manner and isolate the problem, and it goes back to one of the next things that we really need to focus on is making sure we can locate all of our valves, shut them off, and making sure they're being exercised. We had to keep going out farther and farther, and it also impacted all the businesses. So that just kind of gets back to basic utility operations, and I think that it's going to be a focus that we have. And our unaccounted for water has gone up due to those 2 leaks. So I think I answered everybody's questions, but you know, shoot me an email if you have any other questions about this information. But you're right, for 6 hours. Also, not being able, not going out there that night and fixing that. We've critiqued all that and how we can do it better the next time, because that's just unacceptable.
Yeah. And Ms. Bettenhausen, I apologize again. What we were going to do is make sure that the 6A was complete. We commented on Mr. Gruber's portion. The district engineer is going to make a quick presentation. We'll give you a little more information to do it. And also, I noticed your presence in being able to comment on 6B, so that was wise, and so I have that. But after Mr. Gruber, if you would comment on 6A only.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I'll be brief on the first part of my staff report, because I think Jerry already covered a lot of these. I just have a little more detail, so if you have a question about some of the detail I get into, let me know. Otherwise, I'll just skip past those and not repeat some of the same projects here. The only ones I would touch on are really the sanitary sewer extension to well SR4 treatment facility. We're working on that design. We have North Coast Engineering assisting us on that. There's going to be some easement work and so forth to get squared away, as well as some environmental work on that project. So that's occupying us. That's under item 4 of my summary list on the first page. Item 5, Rodeo Grounds Pump Station Replacement, Stewart Street Tank 3 project. That's proceeding. I just recently received some updated layout drawings from RBF on that I can now put into coastal development permit applications to the county, so that's about to start. So that's moving along. The number 6 long-term water supply project, that's to work with the Army Corps on their EIR, EIS effort. A lot of detailed technical questions went from the environmental consultant to the technical team of the Army Corps. So they're sorting those details out, and that's where that stands at the moment. So I have to get myself in the middle of that and kind of figure out exactly where they're at. And I just haven't had a chance with the other projects that have been happening the last couple of weeks. We had one remodel review that was completed this period. And then I will get into the well level discussion, but I might add, so I don't have to go back to this, I did include some links on water conservation. I do mention that we are watching the well levels closely. I put a link in the staff report people can just click on if they have computer access to our, first of all, our chapter 4.08 of the existing district municipal code talks about the prohibition of the waste of water. There's things on watering times. There's things like not using an open hose to wash your car and so forth. That's been on the books for many years here at the district. So just want people to just remind them of that. We've worked with staff. Our staff has been updating the conservation website. So I included the CCSD website for conservation in one of those links. The H2O house is a really good source of information if you want to get ideas. They actually have an interactive house that you can click on different rooms and get ideas on how to save water. There's a good page by the California Urban Water Conservation Council, which we are a member of, that has product information for conservation. And that also includes commercial applications, which is the main reason I listed that. So if you might be a restaurant owner, for example, might be interested in going to that page. There's the EPA Water Sense. They have a very good web page called Start Saving. And then lastly, the Consortium for Energy Efficiency. And that'll show up later in 8B discussion item on one of the exhibits, but that includes a way you can sort on, say, the Tier 3 level clothes washers, which are the more energy efficient and water conserving clothes washers that we would require if you were going to get a rebate on that type of machine. So there's a lot of information in those links I just want to touch on briefly related to water conservation if people are so inclined to kind of cruise around on the internet and get more ideas that way. So we can, Jesse, we can start on the well levels. I am including well levels in this district engineer's report. We're kind of shifting things from the utility manager's report over to this part of 6A. So that's a new approach that we're now following. Thank you. This is the first part of the handout that you have. There should have been a green sheet handout with each one of these pages out there. The only thing I want to mention, this is well SR4, which is behind the high school. The white dotted line is the data up to July 15th. It's in pretty good shape. It's barely dropped at all from the start of the year. The yellow line didn't show up very well, and that should have been in this index, and we'll catch that the next time. This is the monitoring well down towards the lagoon downstream from the old well field, close to the Windsor Bridge. And that is well WBE, and I'll show that later on a summary level sheet. Next page, please. Oh, I've got to do it. Okay, I'm sorry. Hopefully I'll do this in the right direction here. Oh, it's not going. Oh, there you go. I've renamed this one the spaghetti graph, and in honor of that, I put a bowl of spaghetti at the upper right-hand corner so you'd know which one I was talking about. This shows the well levels from 1988 to March 2003 by month, different colors. And you'll see an updated version of this, more of a statistical-based summary next month. That's my goal, is to show this more as the average, mean, maximum, maybe certain percentiles as opposed to this kind of a graph. And we can still get this information together. Let me do the next one. This is a cleaner version. I don't know why that's showing up, Jesse. Can you just, I might have hit the wrong button. If you have a way to close that blue thing there. Thank you. Oops. Up. Well, we'll figure this out. Okay, thank you. This just takes those same levels and shows the average as a black line, and then the current as that heavier green line in the middle. That's where we're at for 2013. The red is the all-time minimums, and the kind of the brownish color on the top is the all-time highs. And you can see we had a new minimum back around the 1st of June on, this is the San Simeon well field. I believe that's caused mainly by the fact that SR4 was out of service for a good portion of time early in the year. We typically try to start that up in April, and it got started late this year. And when it bounced back up there between June and June 15th, that's when well SR4 started producing again, and we were able to get quite a few of the upgrades finished and get it back online. So you could see the influence of having SR4 by that bump back above the minimum. And currently we're above the minimum, which was around 6.6 feet, and we were at 10 feet for that period of time in July 15th. Next slide. Oops, going the wrong way. We included this updated well level summary sheet. That wasn't in the board packet originally, and there were some requests for this information. So I've added a few more notes, and we'll be including this version in future updates. What I did differently here was under the Santa Rosa Creek wells. SR4 is the only producing well right now. SR1 and 3 have been off service for years now. So instead of averaging those in, I just averaged those 2 wells, and that's that 30.34 number there. In the past reports, they're including the elevation of SR4, and that's about a mile up gradient, so I didn't think it was relevant to include that in the average. So I've just listed SR4 separately. And I added a few more comments here to try to make it clearer to people. The San Simeon well levels, we show the gradient. I'm added the plus here, so it's a positive 1.25. Again, a few little more notes, not much different from what you've seen in the past. Let's see. And I think this is the well production one. I just took a chunk of it and blew it up so you could see the last 5 years. I knew this wouldn't show up on the screen very well. But you could see that for 2013, as of the end of June, about a total of 353.39 acre feet was pumped. In looking at recent years, at that June number of 73.58, if you just kind of travel up there, you'll see that 2007 was pretty similar. That was 73.45. It was a little bit higher in May, but that total was 748. So if I were to project how much water would be pumped this year, just based on where we're at now, it'd be somewhere between the 724 or 725 of the last year and probably that 748 of 2007. That seems to be the trend that we're on right now. So that pretty much concludes what I had on the well levels. So, oh yeah, and then as Jerry just reminded me, the major breaks that were in there too. So we'll try to get our arms around that number that you mentioned was flowing for possibly 6 hours or thereabouts. So we'll look at that specific and try to get more information to you on it next time.
Okay, thank you. Are there any comments from the board before we move to the public?
Thank you. First, I would like to say I very much like where you're moving to, because we continue to use data and we evolve. And this is I think, kind of a good start, a higher level. But if you look at page 24, and I'll just use that one for an example, that's the spaghetti one. What I have always found to be very helpful when we have graphs, which of course, truly they are a picture, and truly they ought to be worth 1,000 words. This one is going to be a great example that I think will really give people a better kind of long-range understanding if, in fact, you start using the comparative data of the range. You've got a range from 1988 to 2013. And so for each of the months that you show here, if you show the mean and then you show the median, which is a very interesting thing because sometimes your average will belie the fact that still half lie below that and half lie above that. So I think having the average for each of these months for that range is very helpful. But I think it's also really important to have on this same particular graph, I think we need to see the rainfall from all that time too. I think that is a critical piece of the information. And I think once we have rainfall, once we see mean, median for each month over that time span or that range that we're using, and then we start having some conclusions, and that is using some, so to speak, out of numbers that we find in the month of June, for example, over the last 13 years, or ever how many years we're actually looking a lot more than that now, that we find that in June, 5 months out of 25 were at this, or whatever the comparison is, that we actually have the graph, the raw data, that we have the range, that we have the mean, that we have the average, that we have the rainfall. But what does it all mean, Alfie, still, is to have some conclusive comments, and I would be more than happy to work with you on that.
I completely agree with that, having the rainfall, and you got to have the ins and outs, and for that matter, that would be good to have on the financial side too, not just the expenditures, but maybe what we're bringing in. And I know we only bill every other month, but it's hard for me as somebody who's supposed to be fiscally accountable for the district to tell whether we're actually on a good track, except for during the quarterly budget. So it kind of would be nice to have both. The other thing I'd like to see on this, I guess it's a chart technically, of the well production would be I know that what's technically the dry season for San Simeon changes every year, right? It's when the water stops flowing at a certain rate past Palmer Flats or something. It would be nice to know which months were the dry months because it isn't standard, so it changes, and knowing that that last year we only had 2 months that were counted as dry season can be useful information. At least I think it could be helpful for long range.
Excellent comments, directors. And if nothing else, Ms. Bettenhausen for 6A. And I'll reserve this for the other one.
Thank you very much, Mr. Interim President. Although the word interim probably is a little iffy these days in the CCSD, so I probably should not use that. I wrote an email on July 12th to Mr. Gruber, Mr. Finnegan, and Mr. Smith, to which I've not heard a response. All of you who have meters in town received the 1912 Consumer Confidence Report. I'm sure you've read it in great detail. It is almost totally incomprehensible unless you majored in science. But on the other hand, I worked my little being off, and I asked several questions. Do I read correctly? Only 3 tests have been done since August 16th, 2011. In the past 2 years, only 2 tests have been done on the quality of the water. I assume this because I haven't had a response. Possibly there was a monthly test on chloroform bacteria, but that's not clear. So that would have been 3 tests. Now, you will also see at the bottom a very detailed explanation of some of the consequences of what happened at SR4, and if I judge correctly for today, is still happening on SR4. You can get sick from this stuff flowing into the water system, friends. I want to go then to respond. I just don't want to rehearse that. If I don't get a response in the email, I don't get a response here, I just bring it up to sort of make my little heart beat a little merrier. But on the first items on the general manager's report, I think we ought to look really seriously as citizens of Cambria, as non-citizens, and as elected officials at the fact that we have state agencies investigating this utilities district. I know that we are now hearing that it was the fault of the predecessor, whoever's. That may well be true, but I would like to see in the library of Cambria Library the huge reports that have now been done by CCSD to make it seem as if we are addressing the health hazards of not having adequate utility service here. And I want to hear updates at every single board meeting of what the state agencies and the regional agencies are finding out about this. I would also like to have the DMM, my acronym love has just really increased since living here, the demand management model or management, whatever that other M is. I don't want it simply to go to the Conservation Ad Hoc Committee for decisions about what management things might be done. I want it to come back to the board for action. And in both the written and the oral, I heard only about the not that ad hoc wasn't mentioned, but it's ad hoc, so that ad hoc conservation committee. I would like to know if there's a manhole near the creek that just got discovered having cut away the county's massive willow forest. I want to know if, quote, the intrusion and infiltration and resolving this, as Mr. Gruber, the general manager, just said, I want to know how many manholes are near the creek and how many of that, what does resolving it mean? Were they moved? Were they closed? I have no idea. It's too vague in its explanation. I would really like to know, friends, and here I'm going to be very clear. I would like to know what the essentially one department of water and wastewater means when you have a utilities manager who has no certification in water, might get it done over a 2-year period. The previous utilities manager, with all due respects, General Manager Gruber, had no certification at the state level of California in water. Now we are having the sewer people show up at the same time as the water people working on water projects. How in the world do we know that they have a diddly-squat notion of what they're about? I could go on. There's just too much stuff that gets reported vaguely in print or in this meeting. And I suppose I might just mention one more thing. When Mr. Cliff asked about the rate study not being completed, I was glad that you then said the rates on connection fees, because I thought you were talking about, well, there are other rates, aren't there? But connection fees, we were told some years back, and I've been here a long time, friends, that the connection fees might be around $50,000 per unit. I want to see Bartles and Wells, God knows they take a long damn time doing what they're doing. I want to see what number they come up with. I'm sure it's going to be, given inflation starting again, 60,000.
Thank you for your comments. And Catherine Hyde, followed by Tina Dickerson.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to talk a little bit more about the 2 major breaks that happened up on Brighton Lane, because I was there, essentially. I mean, I live right around the corner from there. And I have some kind of first-person observations that I want to add, and then I'd like to kind of, tie it into our overall water health. I first learned about the water break because there was a river flowing by in front of my house. Well, there is for a lot of the year. I mean, it was a the Weymouth River, right? It was a river similar to if we'd had 3 or 4 inches of rain and the ground was wet, except none of that was happening. And of course, I looked around the corner to make sure it wasn't something I needed to report. I hit a very interesting level of honesty from a lot of people in the CCSD, including Mr. Gruber, who was actually very kind and patient about answering my comments, more patient than I was at certain points, like when they were out there working at 9 and 10 o'clock at night. But that first day, a CCSD person came to my door to ask if my water was off. I had to go check. It wasn't. And he admitted to me that they had not yet figured out how to turn off the water to that sector, which I think Mr. Gruber kind of touched on in this meeting just now when you said, we have to kind of we have to have a better response next time, and know how to get these things taken care of better. I'm not sure about the one Mr. Beringer was talking about that seemed to have something to do with a hydrant.
A fire hydrant on Main Street.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And for a minute there, when you were talking about it, I thought we were on the same page, because I would like to know how much water we lose on these leaks too. But then, unless I misunderstood you, I came to believe that what you were saying is that might get counted in with our usage, and you don't think it should. And what I'm basically up here to say is exactly the opposite. When we're considering how much water we use, shouldn't we take into account how much water we lose? Just as no one in this room is getting younger instead of older, our infrastructure is not going, I mean, at some point, of course, it might be more maintained and repaired, but that's quite a bit down the road. In the future, in the immediate future, it's absolutely a wild card. What will break next and how much will be lost, it's something that nobody knows. So I would like to know how much water was lost in those couple of breaks, with the idea that it absolutely should be taken into consideration when we make the determination as to whether our water was safe. The other piece of honesty that I got that I wanted to enter into the record, obviously they did figure out how to turn off the water to that sector, because on 2 separate days my water was off for, I won't say all day, but the bulk of the day. The first time it was without notice. The second time it was with notice, which is certainly an improvement. But so there was that first day when water was pouring down the street. There was the first day my water was turned off and they were repairing it. Then they came back to repair it another day. They said, well, it's more extensive than we realized. Then there was the night that when they were up there at 9 to after 10 at night. And it's very noisy, by the way. I mean, I'm not here just to complain about that, but just so you know why I went up there. It's very noisy. And I know that it's not legal in this county to do construction that late at night. So I went up there to kind of say in a not too rude way, what the heck, you know? And the guy that I talked to told me, and this may have been poor phrasing on his part, that the reason they were fixing it at that hour of night is because if they didn't, he would lose all of Cambria's water overnight. Is that an exaggeration? I have absolutely no idea. I don't know. Probably. It couldn't be an extreme exaggeration, because if it was that extreme an exaggeration, they probably would have waited until morning. So whatever portion of Cambria's water it was considerable enough that they had guys out there at 10 o'clock at night. Okay, so my feeling is we can do math about how much water we have, and we can talk about our water usage, but I do absolutely feel we have to include water loss in that. We can talk about how our water usage is down, but it's a wild card whether our water usage will go back up, because that's based on a low occupancy level. But in terms of whether or not there will be more breaks of this size, it's anybody's guess. And I think, you know, based on the laws of inevitability, we should assume that that's indeed the case. The reason I'm standing up here saying it is because I'm beginning to hear a little bit about it, but there was a long time when I kind of felt like I was the only one in Cambria who, not literally, but that just the people who could hear it and knew that it was going on. I don't know if I can get the board to consider that our infrastructure needs to be considered before we make any determinations about how safe we are water-wise. If the board doesn't consider it, I hope the people of Cambria will. Thank you.
Thank you for your personal observations. And Ms. Dickinson.
Tina Dickinson, Cambria. Wow, to follow up with both Elizabeth and Catherine, Elizabeth mentioned the cleaning out of the system at Windsor and Highway 1. I happened to be going from Park Hill onto Highway 1, and it was a major project with tree cutting going on. The stench was so bad. Even in my car, it took a while to get beyond that stink. And how many manhole covers are in there? But they were taking out tons of brush. They even had a flatbed truck parked on Windsor to the side as you approach Highway 1. It was a signage truck. It was a huge flatbed that they had to bring out with signs. It was amazing. And the stench was really, I don't know how those guys could have even worked in there without a gas mask. It was so bad. But I bring to your attention something else that Elizabeth touched on. I put in a public records request on July 8th. I've been concerned about the so-called, the merging of the water and wastewater. I don't know. We haven't heard from the general manager whether this has actually happened. I'm reading that equipment is being moved over to the wastewater treatment plant. I called Templeton. I know some of you went out to Templeton. I spoke to Dave Andrews, the general manager there, to ask about the water and wastewater and the certifications for both. I asked in my public records request to please provide the names of the employees in the water and wastewater departments, their levels of certification, and their job description. What I received, I understand that Mr. Finnegan is the utilities manager. I heard he was interim. I didn't know he'd actually been confirmed. I don't believe that's actually ever happened in a board meeting. It was brought up that he was interim. So I did get a certificate that Mr. Finnegan has a grade 3 as wastewater treatment plant operator, okay? He has nothing in water. There's nothing. I received, this is what it's supposed to look like, folks, that. I got this, Justin Smith, grade 2. I don't know, it says operator number. There's no way I can see that this is from the state of California. There's just, it's a mess. And I had to pay for all this stuff, that a third of it is illegible. So I bring to your attention that I don't think, if you merge these two, water and wastewater, my understanding is, from Dave Andrews and from the state, that if you're going to be merging them, that these folks have to be dual certified. Is that true? And if that's the case, our utilities manager certainly should be dual certified. And he is not. And we're running a water and wastewater utilities district when we don't have people that are certified properly to take care of these situations that are occurring. And Ms. Robinette, I have to say, rainfall is extremely important and should be included. But I think you're all ignoring, or you're in denial, that we are in, the whole county, we're reading about in the Trib, that we have water issues throughout the state, throughout the country, throughout the world. And for you guys to be just looking at this production report from 1988, we are up 42 acre-feet from 2012 than we were in 2011, and we're probably over 20 acre-feet for the same period of this year over last year. We've had water leaks in the past that were never reported. All of a sudden now we're getting reporting on them because you want to realize, you want us to believe that, oh, it's the water leaks that are all of a sudden. Yeah, I'm sure they are, but you can't disregard what's already happening, or global warming. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now we'll move on to member and committee reports. Maybe we can start with Ms.
Okay.
Rice.
Let me start with the North Coast Advisory Council meeting. They met last week on Wednesday. They have started a program of sending a couple of folks out to the farmers market the Friday before the NCAC meeting, and apparently that went over quite well. And the meeting was pretty packed with people, actually, and I don't think there was any specific item that had brought them out. There are a couple of openings. The alternate for Area 6, I think which is Area 6 is a Marine Terrace. And if you live in any of these areas, I'm sure the council would like to hear from you if you'd like to represent your neighborhood. I believe they need people for Area 2, which is Happy Hill and Lamert. And I believe Area 3 is in need of a representative also, possibly Area 5. The current chair is Claudia Harmon-Worthen, and if you would like more information on that, I think she's listed in the book. There was a presentation from the Public Works Department of the county about pavement and sidewalk issues. They talked about pavement quality, and there were 3 projects that they looked at that are working on building houses, and the new composition of the land use committee seems to be very thorough, and they gave some recommendations on the projects themselves, but the overriding consideration that they gave on all of them was that we don't have water, so nobody should be able to build. So they spent a lot of time delineating what kinds of conditions they'd like to see, And then on top of that added that they didn't think that any of those would apply because they don't think that people should be able to build. So it was kind of an interesting position to take, an interesting meeting. The other thing is make sure you don't leave stuff in your car. The sheriff's report at the NCAC, the sheriff said that there's been a lot of breaking into cars to just grab whatever seems to be sitting on the seats, especially at some of the hotels. Cambria Pines Lodge in particular has been problematic, so don't leave stuff in your car. And if you do, leave it unlocked, then you won't have a broken window. Because they're not rifling through and grabbing stuff, they're just grabbing whatever's sitting on the seat. So he said, make sure you lock your cars, take the stuff, or store it in the trunk or whatever. Couple of other things. Do you want to make the water use efficiency report?
Well, I thought we would have quite a bit of discussion on that
Okay.
during the meeting anyway.
Okay. Another meeting I attended was the San Simeon riparian landowners have been getting together to discuss how to deal with conservation and efficient use on their properties of the water that they have on their properties, that runs right by their properties, I should say. And as part of those discussions, which have been led by Ron Harbin, who is from the Resource Conservation District, part of the discussion at this most recent meeting was about, because Rick Hawley had brought up last month about the fish and moving the fish. And so I brought up that issue because I thought that these folks might be knowledgeable about the fish and things. And the report that I got from them was they seemed to think that the reason why they had a program in place, and the reason they had stopped doing the program was because the county or Fish and Wildlife had instituted a permit fee of about $1,500, and they had all these volunteers that were doing this, but they had to get this $1,500 permit, and so they stopped doing the program of moving the fish. And so it was my idea that maybe we should have on our agenda consideration, because we have had people come here to our meeting saying that they would like to do something about helping the fish. If we do have to indeed get Fish and Wildlife involved and there is a permit fee, I think that the district might be able to cover that fee if we can gather the people. The other thing they said is, before you get Fish and Wildlife involved, talk to the folks that are on the creeks to find out where the fish are and whether they'd be willing to let people onto their property to help do the moving if they need to be moved. And I thought that it was a very productive discussion that we had, and I think there was a general feeling that the CCSD is not so much the enemy as much anymore. The first meeting that I went to, I came in and, well, let's just say they were welcoming, but they were more welcoming once I left. And I do feel that we've come a long way in terms of being able to communicate, and I think that that's a good dialogue. I would love to begin a dialogue between the district and the folks that are the landowners along Santa Rosa Creek as well.
Mr. Clifford?
The Shared Services Committee met, and a lot of what Chief Miller kind of reported here. The decision, just to give you a background, everything was going along swimmingly, and in an operational basis, everything was working very well. And when we got ready to kind of do something legally, we found out that there's a quirk in the healthcare law which does not allow the healthcare employees to operate as firefighters. So we could help the healthcare district, but they couldn't help us. So after looking at all kinds of scenarios, and there may still be one or two scenarios that might be possible, the perception was that probably our only alternative to put together the cooperative nature of organization that we're talking about will probably require special legislation. And that's not uncommon in the legislature for special legislation to deal with a very specific point, and the point being that, we're an isolated community. We have a set of resources, and the better coordination of those resources would be an important thing. We also happen to have an assemblyman who is head of the government committee, and we've had some contacts, and the healthcare district has had some contacts with Cacho, and I had the opportunity to have 2 meetings with him when I was in Sacramento, and he has indicated a willingness to work towards some kind of a potential solution. The problem is that any solution in Sacramento is 18 months to 2 to 3 years off. So the management of the healthcare district by Chief Miller was intended to be a temporary situation. And so they have some internal organizational things that they need to get done, which probably should be handled by somebody their board directs to do, rather than someone who is from our side. And so it did not make sense for him to continue on, because 2-3 years down the road, that might not fall within his career goals. And so it was best to continue working together towards the goals that we want to work towards, but to have them handle have their own administrator, either part-time or full-time, to get through the things they're going to need to get through. So we're still working together. We're still working towards the concept of cooperation and efficient use of personnel, but we're going to kind of have to go at it at a different direction, and it'll take some time. So that was really what the situation there that created that situation. And so both members of the committee from both boards are very actively seeking solutions, and are working very well together, and it should come about. It's just the process could take some time. Other than that,
Thank you. Ms. Robinette?
No, the pros meeting, the one I would report on, is every other month, so that meeting comes up then next month.
Thank you.
I
And
just had a quick question on the, Chief Miller, he gave essentially like a 2-week or a month notice, or is he just stopping?
no, he's going to continue to work through the process of them acquiring probably a part-time person.
Okay.
And he will work with training
Transition.
and assistance to that. And they will continue to reimburse the district for the consulting services he provides to the
Great.
new one. So it isn't a matter of just cutting them off.
No, that's awesome.
It's a process and a transition situation.
I figured, I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you. And one comment just before we go to public comment. Director Rice, I appreciate your points, and I had, regarding the fish, and I had talked to quite a few ranchers trying to understand why they no longer were essentially providing a safe harbor for fish. And your permit issue is excellent, and I don't think it's necessarily the purview of the CSD, but certainly to cooperate along with Green Space or whatever to fund that effort, because there were a lot of volunteers doing it, and we should try and remove those barriers, because it was very successful in saving fish over a period of time. And Ms. Bettenhausen, once again, has an opportunity to speak on 6B.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Certainly, if I was a bit lambastic in my previous comments, I want to apologize, although I think my emotional level was appropriate to the content rationally. Got that? I only have a question now. I expected a report from the Ad Hoc Conservation Committee, given all that's been going on, or perhaps it's called the Water Use Efficiency, which Ms. Rice was going to report on, and then Ms. Robinette responded, and I didn't hear any report from that committee at all. So may I assume that there is no board participation in the formation of conservation policy and management now, or what should I assume?
I think what I got when Gail and I had the abbreviated, I think, version of the conversation, which was that the issues that the Water Use Efficiency Committee, Ad hoc Committee, Conservation Ad hoc Committee discussed are part of the agenda this month, and so there isn't really a separate, did I get that right?
Yes.
There isn't really a separate report, because our report is essentially this item that's in the agenda, and we will report what the committee discussed and provided during that agenda item.
Yes, 8B will give us lots of opportunity to talk about what we've been on.
There wasn't additional.
And what I'd like to do, maybe, this is breaking, I don't think it's breaking a rule, Mr. Hirsch, but I found it sometimes difficult when we would take public comment, then the board discusses, and it seems like the public didn't have another opportunity to kind of say something again. So today for 8B, if it's all right, I would, after the director's comments, I'd like to open it up for a very, very short response from the audience, if that's not outside of the Brown Act or anything like that. So that would be, because sometimes you want to respond to, the board. So, but if that's the case, please make it extremely brief.
And if I could just add on that too, when we're doing our committee reports, that's why I had felt we're going to be talking extensively about a part of that under 8B. And that also picks up another ad hoc committee, the administrative policy review and regulation. So that's going to come out under that section too. So it's not that we weren't doing things, but there'll be a lot of conversation take place.
Okay, well, thank you for that. And the next item is the consent agenda. I would accept a...
I move approval of consent agenda as presented.
Second.
In harmony.
We'll go with Director Rice as the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, carries. So now we'll open up hearings and appeals. I got to open up 8A.
Yeah.
A break after. Let's have a. Okay, we're going to introduce 8A, and then we'll have a very brief, timed to the exact minute break. But so 8A. Should I just open the public hearing, or would you like to read the, I would like to open a public hearing to consider adoption of Resolution 30, 2013, ordering abatement of public nuisance for a fire hazard fuel reduction program.
I'll go ahead and brief you on this one. It's 8A is public hearing to consider adoption of Resolution 302013, ordering abatement of public nuisance for fire hazard fuel reduction program. The recommendations to the board today are receive staff report and review Resolution 302013. We've already opened the public hearing and considering to overrule any protest or objections and adopt Resolution 302013 authorizing the fire chief to abate the nuisance by having the weeds and debris removed from the parcels of property listed in Appendix Exhibit A. Chief Miller went over this briefly, and the supporting documentation is in place. Originally, weeds were removed. It was sent to about 1,823 parcels, which were identified and noticed for weed abatement this year. Many of these parcels were abated by parcel owners and/or personnel contractors prior to the inspection deadline. Of these 1,823 parcels, 106 did not pass inspection and have been placed on the contract list, which is Exhibit A. July 25th was established as the date to hold a public hearing to consider any objections or protest to the abatement of the weeds under the provisions of the Health and Safety Code. The board is to consider any projects and allow for the overrule of any of the objections. Therefore, the board acquires jurisdiction to have the work or removal accomplished by the district, and the board's decision is final. And attached on page 75 is the resolution. And on page 76, the resolution continues. On page 77 is a list of by APN number. We don't have the people's name on there. We don't do that. We just put the APN number. That list is continued on page 78 and is finalized on page 79, which represents a total of 106. And what will happen is by your action today is just that'll roll over onto the tax roll. So.
Okay.
Oh, that's not correct.
And the public?
Tonight's, this isn't the tax roll part. That'll come up later.
I stand corrected.
Today's meeting is to receive any protests from any of the property owners, and then the resolution, once it's adopted, will then authorize the district's contractor to do the work on those properties, after which there would be then another meeting and hearing to confirm the costs so they can go on the tax rolls. So that's a subsequent action that will be taken. This is to allow people to protest and adopt the resolution to direct the work to be done.
And I stand, Mark said somewhere around 66. I see 106. So there was a discrepancy. I just want to make sure that this is the right number.
I think earlier he
106.
commented that it had been reduced.
Okay.
It had cleared up a few. Well, the hearing is open. I don't see any requests for comment. I will now close the hearing, and I will accept a motion to adopt.
I have a
move-
question, I have a
go
question
ahead
first,
first.
sorry. What are the implications if this is not an amended list, or is there a point at which we can change this list? I understand that this authorizes work to be done, but if some of the lots on this list have already been cleared, and we go out there and clear a lot that's already been cleared and charge them,
I would assume that'll be handled then at the staff level, and subsequently the work that gets done and that gets brought before the board for approval to go on the tax rolls, of course, would be those ones where they do actual work.
I just don't want those 40 people that have cleared their lots to have I experienced a couple of years ago, my neighbor had a lot cleared that he had already cleared and was charged for it, even though it was already cleared. And I just don't want to have these 40 people that are on this list have their lots re-cleared and then get charged when it's actually already done.
I know what you're referring to, and I think we've worked through that. I think, as David indicated, that the fire department cross-references, if you will, to make sure that they're not. We haven't had that problem since I've been on board of somebody that has cleared their lot being charged, at least that I know of. So I think we've worked through that through the administrative process.
It seems that, of course, like everything, it evolves, it changes, and for a long time, if you had a lot, you were supposed to then have it cleared and notify the fire department. However, the fire department actually, I think because there were so many discrepancies, has actually taken over the checking, and they take time to find out which lots now, by their deadline, have actually been cleared. So I think it's fairly accurate.
I just want to make sure that I understand the implications, since I'm voting on something that's a resolution. I just want to make sure that what the implications are if this list isn't correct, if there's a way to amend it, or
I think-
that we don't have people that have a problem with it.
Isn't it correct that this is just the authorization to have these done? That we'll have a separate meeting to actually charge the people, and so those people could come before the board and say, wait a minute, Joe.
That's correct. There would be a report that would be prepared with regard to the costs that were incurred,
Yeah.
and that would then be brought to the board
Okay.
for.
And they get a letter or something letting them know that that's going on, yes? We notify them, yes?
Yeah.
We do notify them, yes?
Yeah.
And thank you, directors,
you.
for your discussion. I will accept a motion to adopt.
Okay. All right. I move that we adopt Resolution 302013, ordering abatement of public nuisance and fire hazard fuel reduction program.
Second.
I think I'll take a roll call vote on this one, please.
Director Robinette,
Aye.
Director Clift,
Yes?
Director Rice,
No?
and Vice President, Acting President Barronker.
Yes.
The motion carries 3-1 and 1 absent.
Thank you. With that, I will have a short adjournment. I will gavel the meeting back into place at 2, or is it 2? 2:25. What time is it now? It's 2:15. If it's all right with Mr. Hirsch, even if it isn't. Agenda item 9B, we're considering an extension of intent to serve letter for Cambria Shores in Kim Edie. And if it's okay with the board, what we would do is move that up. I believe it's going to be a very brief item. If anybody would like to speak to 9B, I have not received. No, 9B.
9B.
9B. We're going to move that up so that, yeah.
Yeah, 9B.
Yeah, and, yeah, we're going to move 9B up unless Mr. Hirsch thinks there's a problem, and nonetheless. So does anybody have any public comment for agenda item 9B? If not, I would accept the general manager.
I think Mr. Eady may want to comment on this.
Yeah, and if Mr. Eady would like to comment,
Do you want to make a staff report?
Well, I can give a brief introduction. The 9B, as Vice President Berenger said, is consider extension of, extend to serve for Cambria Shores, Kim Edie applicant APN 022.381002. Staff recommends that the Board of Directors approve a 12-month extension of a 6 commercial EDU intent to serve letter for Kim Edie's Cambria Shore Inn. Above referenced APN with the conditions that there be significant progress or completion of the project prior to July 24th, 2014 in order to be eligible for an additional extension, and that the project shall be subject to meeting all the current standards per CCSD code 4.16160 section A. Thank you.
All right, with that said, if there, Mr. Eady.
Hi, I'm Kim Edie with Cambria Shores. I know I've been here many times, but I've also been under construction for 4 out of 5 years between 2006 and 2010. And long story short, I'm doing the best I can to finish what I started. I bought the property in 1999. It's actually, I'm 4 years older than the property. So when I started this, in 1999, I anticipated being done soon. Coastal Commission did their equation. I worked with Steve McMasters with the environmental planner, and we came up with a new program. So we threw away the old plan, started with a new one, and long story short, I have the manager's unit to finish. I've gone through the 2 conditions that I need to meet by the end of next year. I will do the best I can to meet those. It would be nice to have an additional year, but I'm good with where we're at. I have a new permit in place for 3 years. Thank you for your consideration. Do you have any questions?
Any questions from the board?
I have just one question. Do you think that you will be able to meet the significant progress or completion before next July? Because and then if you don't.
I'm going to do the best I can to meet that. It's difficult in the equation that I'm currently in, which I don't need to go into that. I can't predict what's in the future. I have done substantial progress, over $3 million between 2006 and 2010. I'm like 90% done with the financial end of it, but every time you go into a construction project, you don't know what's in front of you, and that's what happened in 2010. I couldn't finish what I started, which was to finish the manager's unit, so we split the permit. The minor use permit off into 2 permits, and that new permit is good for 3 years, starting back, I think it was last month, June of 2013, so.
Were you thinking maybe 2 years just to
I was
take care of it?
thinking- Yeah, I was thinking at least 2 years, or taking off the condition that he can't apply for any more extensions, or give him an opportunity, like say he can get extensions at least to the end of his county building permit time.
Okay, well, I would move that we approve an extension of the intent to serve letter for a period of 24 months.
Second.
With that amendment of a change to 24 months, it's first, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Okay, welcome. And going back to agenda item 8B, I have a group of requests to speak, and as I mentioned before, after the public comment and after the board comment, we'll entertain very brief responses from the audience. I do have a request, or actually Cynthia Hawley has submitted a written item, submitted for the record for 8B. Is Ms. Hawley available and would like to speak? If not, I will submit this to the district clerk for inclusion. And the first member with a request. Oh yeah, let's get a report from Mr. Gruber, and after that we'll open it up to public comment.
Thank you, Vice President Berger. I'm just going to read this subject and then turn it over to Deputy District Counsel David Hirsch. Today's subject on number 8B is public hearing to consider introduction of ordinance 03-2013 and adoption of resolution 19-2013, amending the CCSD municipal code and approving administrative procedures and related actions to implement the interim issue of intent to serve letters and the revised water conservation and retrofit program. Thank you.
And I'm going to keep the staff report relatively brief, since we've already had a study session workshop with the board on this, and the staff report actually is largely the same as the staff report that was presented at that workshop. You have before you a resolution for adoption, which will include an administrative policy for this interim issuance of intent to serve letters. It also has other exhibits that would be adopted that would be to replace some provisions in the current code that are adopted by ordinance. One is the list of the acceptable and prohibited water savings and plumbing devices, and the other is a retrofit points equivalency table that is currently part of Chapter 4.20 of the code. In addition, you have before you an ordinance that would change several provisions in Chapter 8.04, as well as adopt a modified Chapter 4.20 and 4.16. Of particular importance also is to note that the Chapter 4.20 is the existing water conservation and retrofit program in the district code. This would modify that to more explicitly call out this interim issuance of intent to serve letters program, as well as the points bank, and make other related changes to the code. The resolution could be adopted today. The ordinance would be subject to the normal process of reading by title only, waiving further hearings, and then being introduced, and would be adopted at the next meeting. Since the workshop or study session on June 21st, the changes that were discussed at that meeting were incorporated into the drafts and then reviewed with the Ad hoc Administrative Procedures Committee, and there was also a meeting with the Ad hoc Conservation Committee to discuss the Madaus report. And of course, the Madaus Water Management folks are the ones that created the water use efficiency plan, as well as the revised retrofit points equivalency table, which basically sets out the number of points needed for new developments and what various devices translate into as far as points and so on. And of course, that was something that was discussed at the June 21st study session. So that's probably sufficient as far as a staff report to get into this, since it's been the subject of discussion already to this point.
Thank you.
One other item is we have Lisa Madaus, I believe, on WebEx, or, you know, if we need to ask any questions from Madaus Water Management regarding the points bank table that was modified and things like that, I believe she's available if cyberspace works for us today.
Cyberspace, okay.
Yeah, so that we do have that technical side of it available if the board so desires or has any questions that staff can't answer.
But I should add one other thing, and that was at the study session, there was some discussion of a provision in the administrative policy that related to the issue of revocation of intent to serve letters and what happens to the points and in lieu fees. And that was subsequently discussed with the ad hoc committee, which decided the language should be left the same, however, as was in the draft. However, there was an indication that from the ad hoc committee that really needed to be discussed by the board as a whole. If the board wants to change that language, I do have some proposed language to accomplish that. As it stands now, the retrofit in lieu fees would stay with the project and would not be refunded. If it's changed to provide that the fees are to be refunded, then again, I do have some language, and there's actually a section in Chapter 4.20 that would also have to be modified as well.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hurst. And if you would remind us of that in the event it doesn't come out of the ad hoc committee report, I'd appreciate that. With that said, the first person to speak on this issue is Catherine Hyde, followed by Elizabeth Bettenhausen. Catherine Hyde. I'll put this at the bottom in case she comes back. Elizabeth Bettenhausen, followed by Susan Shaler.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I'm Elizabeth Bettenhausen, a full-time resident of Cambria for, this almost 12 years now. And I want not to raise everything I usually raise because that would take us 6 years. I want to raise only several issues. I'd like you please to turn to page 85 of your agenda and look at the comment there on the amendment to your ordinance, your municipal code. And on page 85 at the bottom, you're making an addition. In order to implement the district's program to issue intent to serve letters on an interim basis while the district continues to pursue a long-term supplemental water supply project, during each allocation year, the board of directors shall make a determination regarding how many intent to serve letters are to be made available for issuance. The process for determining the number of intent to serve letters that will be made available shall be set forth in an administrative policy approved by the board. My question, my first two quick questions: who will draft this policy, and when will it be brought to the board? Who will draft this administrative policy, and when will it be brought to the board? If not in the near future, I assume we would then get a monthly update on any progress thereon too. Then I have another question. If you turn to page 104 in your agenda, 103, pardon me. The reference to the administrative policy adopted in accordance with that section of the ordinance is stated there. The Board of Directors of the Cambria Community Services District may authorize intent to serve letters. Now we're on page top of 104. The number of points required to offset use for the project shall be calculated based upon administrative procedures approved by the board, etc. Are administrative policy and administrative procedures identical, or are they two totally different things, or somewhat different things? I'd like real attention to that, please, because both of them have to be adopted by the board, according to this statement here. You look further down on page 104, there's reference made. The closer I get to 71, my glasses are a little more challenging to me. And other district programs used to achieve verifiable reductions in existing water use in the district's service areas. No, I won't play around with words. When you say verifiable reductions, what do you mean?
Okay.
What do you mean? I'm not quite done, sir. I do
Okay.
have one more comment quickly to make, and that is the in lieu fees. Are the in lieu fees, then there's reference to that down at the last paragraph on that page, but many, many places through here, I won't cite them all. Are the connection fees in lieu fees, now let me back up. Are the connection fees that you'll hear about in August, not October, August, going to be devoted exclusively to the build-out reduction program or not? And please go back and read the build-out reduction program before you make that decision. Are the in lieu fees going to be spent on anything other than the conservation program? Anything other than the conservation program? I think your answer to that explicitly is extremely important before you adopt both your administrative policy and your administrative procedures. And as you can imagine, I look forward to reading them both carefully.
Thank you.
If I may, just for clarification, the administrative policy is to be adopted today as part of the resolution. It's the Exhibit A, I believe, of the resolution.
Yes, I assume that also, but what I would like to do is make sure we get all the public comment, and there's going to be reiterations of the same, I think. Susan Shaler, followed by Dennis Freyhemen.
Good afternoon to the board. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I am Susan Shaler. I'm an owner of a second home here in Cambria, and at various times since 1995, I've owned a second home in Cambria. And I'm here to express my concern that the district is not properly considering the protection of existing water users' access to water. We've had this afternoon, Director Robinette asked for a correlation of the data that we do have with rainfall. That would provide the district and the board with more information. Director Rice asked for a correlation of the data we have with the dry season in San Simeon. That would provide more data. Additionally, I heard discussion of conservation efforts. In 2011, when I replaced my washing machine, there was no rebate for a water saver machine. There are 711 water shower heads. What's the follow-up? Were those installed? Are they installed properly? And that information, too, should be graphed. Over the years, you have data from 1988 through mid-year of 2013. What conservation efforts were employed during those years, and how does that correlate with the well level and the production? And finally, and the reason that I'm here, and the reason I got up at 3 o'clock this morning in San Diego to drive up, so if I'm not making sense, excuse me, this is a second home for my husband and me right now, but we're going into what I'll call semi-retirement next year, and we're going to be spending more and more time here in Cambria and using more and more water. And I believe that we're on the leading edge of a demographic of the baby boomers who will be doing the same thing. I'm not sure off the top of my head today what the percentage of second homes here is, but I think that one thing that should be considered is the number of second homes which will have increased occupancy from the homeowners over future years. And what we do know from the tables that we've looked at and from the prediction we received here today, that the predicted water usage for 2013 is going to be somewhere between 2007's usage and 2012's usage, which were high water usage. So we have increased usage at a time when we have conservation efforts and no new water permits. So it seems like that is a problem for existing water users, and I ask for the board to take the time necessary to really look at the data and get more data as needed so that the existing water users are protected over time and not rush to issue intent to serve letters. Thank you.
Thank you. Dennis Freeman, followed by Jean Matthews, Mateus? Mateus, anyway. I'm just giving you a heads up. Okay, Mr. Hitt.
Hi, my name is Dennis Freeman. I've been a homeowner here in Cambria for 5 years. It was a second home until this past November when I moved here full-time. When I moved here full-time, one of the things I made as a commitment was to begin attending these meetings each month, which I have been doing and have been sitting here quietly, because I think water is really key to the future and the economic health of this town. Having talked to people behind me, I believe, unlike most people here today at this meeting, I'm here because I really do want to support moving forward on these resolutions and administrative changes. Having sat through these meetings, I have found the conservation plan to be a very well thought out plan. It's one that I do believe is believable, which does need to be looked at to be sure it's verifiable as you move forward, but I do believe it creates the water savings that allows you to add additional intent to serve letters. And I think you, as the directors of this district, have a responsibility to all the interests in town to really balance what's best for the town as a whole. And I think in doing that, it's not just the current residents, it's also the other people who own land in town who want to eventually build here. I'm not one of those. I am one of the people who's lucky enough to live here currently. I don't have that vested interest, but I think you need to consider them as well. And I do think you need to consider the economic health of the town, because I think without continued, well-controlled, well-thought-out development, a town like this is not going to be healthy and survive. I grew up in a Midwestern resort town, which failed to do that. It's dying on the vine, and I would hate to see that happen to this town. And I would therefore encourage you to continue to move forward, and I want you to know I support these activities. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Jean, followed by Ms. Dickinson. I'm sorry for, I couldn't read that name. But.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for the opportunity to address you this afternoon. I've been a resident of Cambria for close to 12 years. My name is Jean Matulis. Like many other Cambria residents, I am very concerned about the water shortage and always have been. Even before I moved here, I was very clear about buying a piece of land that had a water meter on it. One of the rationales for amending the municipal code at this point, it relies heavily on the conservation efforts and the water use efficiency plan. You know, like I said, I'm very concerned about conservation. One summer, I even went through the whole summer without watering my yard for the purpose of allowing non-drought resistant plants to pass peacefully, so that I could replace them with drought-resistant plants. So this is very important. But the fact is that when we Cambrians are trying to conserve water, we're trying to conserve it for our use, for our survival. We're concerned about fire. This is a real fear. It's not to build more to build more houses that will consume more water. We're desperately trying to hang on so that we will have enough water to live and survive. You know, there was a previous discussion about the shower heads and how this is being used as, okay, now we can give more intent to serve letters because we have all these shower heads. I just want to share my own personal experience. I went and I did get a shower head. I gave it to my plumber and I asked him to install it. Here it is right here. I asked him to install it. When I received it, I gave specifications of exactly the kind of shower I had. This is what I was given. He said it wouldn't work, and it was also missing a part. I'm going to have to return this, and I should return this, I'll go probably within the next week or so and return it. But I just want you to know that even though these are being distributed, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're being used. And how many people, if they find they don't work, make the extra effort to return it? That needs to be followed up on. Maybe we could do a survey. I don't want people to come into people's houses in the middle of the night to see, are you using our shower heads, at least without a warning. But basically, I think that this is sort of a fly by the seat of our pants approach to it, that we're conserving water, so now we can, use this explosive use of water through the issuance of new water permits, and I think it defeats the whole purpose. So thank you very, very much for listening. Thank you.
Ms. Dickinson, then Karen Dean.
Tina Dickinson, Cambria. First of all, we have seen no reduction in water despite the February water efficiency plan put into place. This was on the table when I came in. We have had nothing in our water bills, no notification of what measures have been taken for conservation. And it doesn't even, to me, conservation is even out the window. You have not supplied yet an alternate supply of water. Forget conservation, that's one thing. But that is not a guaranteed supply of water, which has been the job of the CCSD for a very long time, since 2001 when the moratorium was put into place. That has not happened. We now have, in last week's paper and again this week, the ranchers are trying to conserve, not using their allocation of CCSD water. One person last week was quoted as saying, we're trying to conserve because the CCSD is in a pickle. A rancher in this week report, in this week Cambrian, says he told the Cambrian, this is Mr. John Padati, whose land borders on San Simeon Creek Road. He told the Cambrian July 23rd that, I quote, "The riparian landowners who share the watersheds with the district were pretty much blindsided by this action to release intent to serve. It sends a message that Cambria doesn't have a water problem, and therefore it is not necessary for us riparian users to continue to voluntarily reduce our pumping. I can only assume that the CSD decision makers are not familiar with the history or the limited capacity of our local aquifers," end of quote. I think that this is probably the most irresponsible action I have seen any board, if you do it, take from the time I bought a house here in 1997. Unlike the previous speaker, we bought a house in 97. There's no way we'd even thought of buying a piece of land in Cambria. So while I mean, 20 intent to serves. I did a little calculating last night. I don't know what you're going to charge for an intent to serve, a hookup. We don't even know yet. And yet you're going to the county asking them from a 0 to 1% change in the growth management ordinance. And you don't have your ducks in a row because, number one, you don't have the alternate supply. And number two, you have not been able to verify the very program that you are depending on to get the GMO changed. It is total, in my opinion, insanity. And I hold you all responsible if 20 people or more or less get an intent to serve, and then they go to the county for a MUP, a minor use permit, and they can't get it, then what? Then you're going to have 20, some out of that 20 probably go to sue you. So I would be very, very careful. Or you may have the whole town sue you. But you're setting yourself up big time. Big time. Thank you.
Karen Dean, followed by Mary Webb.
Good afternoon. My name is Karen Dean. We have been part-time homeowners here since 1994, and like the folks from San Diego, we are in the process of retiring, and we will be here full-time within a couple of months. Oh, thank you. When we bought our property, our realtor was very, very thorough in explaining the whole water situation here and encouraging us to buy an existing home, because if we bought a piece of property, we may never get to build here. And after all this time we've owned the home, it has looked like that. I have a question. How do you know how many properties are left to be retrofitted? How do you know what residents have gone ahead and done it on their own? We have changed everything we possibly could change to the most water-efficient things we could. We've bought new washer and dryer, we bought a new dishwasher. As we replaced our bathroom floors, we had our toilets replaced, we had all water-efficient shower heads and faucets put on. We have done everything that we could to conserve water. Everything in my yard that's planted doesn't need to be watered. I've done everything I could to do drought tolerant, but you know that after only being here 10 days out of a month for years, when we're here full time, we're going to use a lot more water. Have you taken into consideration that there are a lot of part-time people here who are becoming full-time, even though they've done everything they could to do water conservation on their homes? Their water use is going to increase. Have you taken that into consideration? We've also had a recession for the last few years. There's a lot of people here who have vacation homes and second homes who haven't been able to afford to come over here. There's been a lot of homes that have been foreclosed on and have sat empty for a quick period of time that are going to become occupied. Have you taken that into consideration? I also have another question. I would like to know if any of the CCSD board members, if you have wait list positions, and would it be a conflict for you to vote on the issue of allowing intent to serve letters? Thank you.
Thank you. And following Mary Webb would be Catherine Hyde. Has Catherine returned? And if not, it'll be Jeff Hellman.
Good afternoon, Board. Mary Webb, Vice President of Green Space, the Cambria Land Trust. I'm sorry I got this letter in late, but I just submitted it today, and I emailed the attachments that go with it. This is regarding your CSD intending to issue new intent to serves today. We think it could severely decrease water supply to residents and visitors and adversely affect coastal resources. The issues before us are that we are still in the California State Water Code 350 declaration of a water shortage emergency. The Regional Water Quality Control Board Decision 1624 for Santa Rosa Creek required a groundwater basin management plan that has never been completed. The Coastal Commission in the 1998 North Coast Area Plan update found that significant concerns existed with the CSD's withdrawals from San Simeon and Santa Rosa Creeks, and that there were potential impacts to riparian habitat. The concerns were reiterated in the Commission's 2001 adoption of the LCPs, and they named increased water use, resource extraction, would affect coastal streams containing endangered species, and Monterey pine forest removal. There no in-stream flow studies have been done as outlined by the California Coastal Commission in Helsinki and Monaco. No habitat conservation plan has been conducted that was outlined in the Cambria Pines Lodge expansion appeal. The Cambria Forest Management Plan has not been funded and implemented. The Cambria Build-Out Reduction Plan has not been funded and implemented. At last guess, that was going to be $50,000 per hookup to help buy lots in town. So any connection fees have to be at least $50,000. I would think that that amount has gone up now to pay for build-out reduction. No new water supply, water storage project, or water recycling program has been identified, approved, or funded. The benefits of the recently adopted conservation program have yet to be validated or independently verified for water savings. The water production report shows an increase of 41.86 acre feet up from 2011 to 2012. And then for the first 6 months of this year, we're up another 17.9 acre feet for the first 6 months of this year as compared to last year. Increased production of water to levels not seen since 2007 were reported. Cambria is in the second year of a 2-year drought. Vacancy rates in Cambria are at an all-time high of 32%. Water connections in excess of the 124 total allowable pipeline projects during the moratorium have already occurred. And the amount of water needed to provide water for the current and active service water commitments as described in Exhibit D of your December 2012 staff report is unknown. It may exceed current supply already, and Exhibit D did not include the 20 new intent to serves or 40 new affordable housing EDUs that you've approved in 2013. And municipal code, the CSD municipal code and all the updates to CSD Title IV allow in lieu fees, in contrast to the Coastal Commission stipulating that in lieu fees are not permitted as equivalent offset. So due to negative impacts to local coastal creeks, the community's reliance on groundwater with no other options, we respectfully ask the CSD to not open the water wait list and issue new intent to serve letters, and we request that San Luis Obispo County not allow a change to our growth management ordinance until these milestones are met. A full environmental impact report should be conducted before the growth management ordinance is changed in order to guarantee no harmful or unmitigated impacts to the creeks and the community. In addition, due to the 2-year drought, with no new water project on the horizon, the SLO County Board of Supervisors should certify the Level 3 water shortage emergency at the earliest possible time to protect people and coastal resources. So our board met about a week ago, and we've come up with this decision. We also reiterated this decision to County Supervisor Bruce Gibson at the NJC meeting last week. Thank you.
Thank you, and I think that's our internet connection going up or down or whatever. And lastly, unless I have other slips, Mr. Jeff Hellman, please.
I'm Jeff Hillman, the resident of Cambria. Everything's been said. It's been really clear. I think you people have taken in a lot of information. I've been to so many of these meetings, though, and all this really great information seems to go like just past you. It doesn't care. You just vote the way you want to vote. I want to say a couple of things. One is the gentleman who said, you know, if we're not going to grow, we're going to die. Well, I got to really refute that. This town, somebody told me in the Trib they saw the other day that this revenue, the county reports that revenue from this area is up like 20 or 30% over last year. That's a real dying town. There's less homes for sale right now than any time that I've lived here, about 8.5 years now. So if this is a dying town, I'd like to see what a real dying town looks like. That was an absurdity. The second thing is, and this is my opinion, my biased, opinionated, extremely, opinionated opinion is, the board, to me, has the appearance that it's in the pocket of people that are investors in real estate. We have a board that's going to, apparently somebody on the board has a waiting position. They're going to vote on issuing intent to serve letters. Is that ethical? Is that right? Is that moral? Does that have an appearance of a conflict of interest? Well, use your own judgment. But I'm talking to a lot of people out there, not you people, but people that own homes and just quietly and privately live in their homes here. And there's outrage out there that you people are going to start issuing water meters in the conditions that we find ourselves in right now. So from my point of view, this board is not looking like the most ethical board I've ever seen. It's just really unfortunate and sad that you people are going to abuse the existing ratepayer base to favor those who want to be here on a bargain. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hellman, and I'll bring it back to the board.
I'll start. Unless staff wants to respond to any of the questions that were raised by the public. I wrote down a bunch of things. The first thing is that today is the day that we're actually doing the modification to the ordinance that would change the rules, and that's one of the reasons why the public hasn't had anything in their water bills or anything, because today, this is what we're considering today, is the changes that will affect the code, the changes that will help implement the water use efficiency plan. And verifying is extremely important to me as well. And one of the reasons why the emergency 350 isn't being lifted is because one of the tools that the district can use to protect the water resource is to declare a moratorium. But it's something that we can do. It's not something we have to do as part of a water 350. By leaving it in place, if it turns out that we aren't able to build, say, however many, let's say 2 new houses, and then we can't verify that those 2 houses have actually offset any additional use that they have, that we can put the moratorium back on without having to go through a very long extended process, so that we can protect the habitat and the water that's available for people who live here already, whether you live here full-time or not. Now, it's my understanding that we calculate our future demand not based on who's currently here and how many houses are actually occupied. We calculate it out based on the number of connections that it is, disregarding how many of them are actually filled. There is a population calculation that, the number of people per connection, and in the water use efficiency plan, the calculation includes a 2.2 per household number, which is higher than it actually is. So it errs on the side of being conservative and careful so that we count extra. Part of the water use efficiency plan is also to make sure that houses don't just offset gallon for gallon what they would be using. They offset 175 gallons per connection per day, and that's more than most people in Cambria use, which means that we should see actually a reduction in use with new building, because it's actually offsetting more water than what an average household here uses. Some of the questions that I had about the way that the water use efficiency plan is put together in the retrofit points, the number of points that are required to build a new house, those are all calculated out, and I went backwards and forwards about how do we figure that out. A new house has to use 120 points if it's on a lot less than 4,000 square feet and it's any number of bathrooms, 120 points. That's equal to 175 gallons per day. The normal household, average household in Cambria, you really only use 71 points if you calculate out what your water use is from say 6 units every other month. That's about 71 points. So we're asking people to offset more because we don't know if they're going to be a water conserving household or not. So we're erring on the side of caution there. I personally wouldn't be supporting issuing letters of intent if I thought it was going to affect the amount of water that I get to use, because I live here too. And I don't want to hurt our habitat, and I really want to make sure that we do make sure we're doing everything that we can to protect both the people that live here and the habitat and the creeks so we don't get saltwater intrusion. And that's one of the reasons why we're asking for so much data. There's a lot more we can do, and we're going to be looking at those things as we go forward. This is just the first step in a number of things that have to get done before anybody is ever going to break ground to build here. The last thing I'm going to bring up just at the moment is the term in lieu. It really confused me reading through this. Every time it says people pay these in lieu fees for retrofit points. Well, because Mary, I had the same concern. I don't want anybody paying something. See, to me, in lieu means instead of doing retrofits, instead of saving water. That's not what it means in this situation. I'm not sure why it's used in the way that it's used here, but it just is a way of saying this is what you pay for points. Points are the money that get used for points get used to do retrofits. And it was a really good point. I think it was Elizabeth that brought up the point that what are you going to use that money for, and if it's going to include the build-out reduction program or not. I think that is a legitimate question, and one that I hadn't actually considered was how to pay for the build-out reduction, because that is one of the mitigations for any additional water supply, any supplemental water supply project that we have. It is one of the things we have to look at. There are a lot of things involved in this whole thing, and this is just the beginning. So the in lieu does not mean in this situation instead of, unless I've completely misinterpreted, but I don't think so, because I think we had this conversation, that in lieu does not in this case mean instead of. You can't just pay and then that money just goes off to the district and then there's nothing that's attached to it in terms of water savings. I'm going to stop there for the moment.
Mr. Cliff, you have a comment?
Eloquently put, Director Rice. I agree with what you've said. I want to bring up about 3 points that seem to keep popping up either in comments or in the newspaper. One point is the moratorium. We no longer have a moratorium a moratorium was one of the options we had under the 350 water emergency. Even members down at the county kept using the term when Assistant District Counsel McNulty had to call down supervisors saying that Cambria no longer has a moratorium. They have adopted a rule that says we will not add additional usage unless we have a new water source. However, we may be able to issue intent to serve letters with offset water, which is part of the North Coast Area Plan. It's following the North Coast Area Plan. Director Rice eloquently provided the reasoning for keeping the 350 emergency in force. If we keep that 350 emergency in force, we have the ability to go back to a moratorium without having the threat of a lawsuit and a procedural thing that could put us in a tighter situation. It gives us the flexibility. Again, Deputy County Counsel McNulty had to explain that to the Board of Supervisors, that was the reasoning for the situation. So the moratorium does not exist, and I somehow got to get people to say there is no moratorium any longer. There is a different set of rules which are allowed under 350, which this board has adopted. The second thing that comes about is new water. And I'm going to refer people back to a March 23rd, 2012 letter from Tom Luster of the California Coastal Commission. And it's a letter that was directed to both Ms. Anderson and Mr. Gleason's relative to the comments on the Corps of Engineers, the scoping for the notice of intent for Cambria Community Services District, notice of preparation for joint environmental review of the Cambria Water Supply Project. And that's the EIS EIR that's being prepared under the direction of the Army Corps of Engineers. The letter has some general administrative statements and comments that remind us of our duties to do certain things. But the part of it that I want to comment on has to do with comments on substantive elements for the EIS EIR. And one of the statements that they make as one of their paragraph heads is expand the range of project alternatives. It says the water supply alternatives identified in the notices are seawater desalinization, local or imported surface water, groundwater, hard rock drilling, and seasonal resort reservoir storage. As we have discussed earlier this year, we recommend the Corps and the CCSD evaluate a much broader range of alternatives as there appears to be other feasible options for meeting the project's objective of providing a reliable supply for Cambria's current and future water needs. They say as part of this evaluation, we recommend the EIR-EIS include an updated reassessments of the alternatives considered in past planning efforts, referring to our 2004 assessment of long-term water supply. It says we also recommend that the EIS, EIR evaluate combined alternatives, since there may be instances where a combination of feasible alternatives can comprehensively provide the expected water supply that a single alternative cannot. We recommend that the expanded range of alternatives evaluated include those described below as both a standalone, again, I'll repeat the word, standalone or combined water supply source. Their number one bullet point is additional conservation measures. And they state that although Cambria has already incorporated a number of conservation measures into its water supply system, there appears to be others that could further reduce demand and thereby create additional supply from existing sources. That sentence says to me that the California Coastal Commission says that conservation is additional water. It'll be an interesting, for if they back off on that somewhere in the future. It says the EIS, EIR, and I do have to admit that probably that won't be heavily part of the EIS, EIR, because the Army Corps of Engineers has indicated that they want to study the things that are built into their grant and not necessarily all the things that we wanted them to study. But the fact of the matter is, the California Coastal Commission is saying that thereby create additional supply from existing sources. And it says the EIR, EIS should evaluate the feasible conservation measures, identify the amount of water each would provide as part of the CSD's overall water supply portfolio. Now, again, I don't think the Army Corps of Engineers report will do that, but I sure think the Mattis report has done that. And so the argument about conservation is paper water, conservation is not real water, I don't know, I don't think that, pardon the pun, holds water. Now, the past in lieu things about not following up and not overseeing, and I think that's a valid argument that was the case. I think the case was that developers were told, go out and find, tell us that you retrofitted things, and we'll let you build. One of the reasons of the in lieu fees being controlled by the CCSD, I think, is that we can confirm stuff, and that we should confirm stuff. So I think that the lax that occurred during a previous period of time where technically there was no show of that conservation saved anything. And I think that is a situation of twofold. One, the district was not willing to commit the dollars to create the conservation and was not willing to follow up and do the work that we're expecting this district to do. Now, I live here too. I have no intention of making the situation of any worse than it is, and I think that what we're asking citizens to do, another argument that comes about is that you're asking me to conserve more so that someone else can build. And I believe this board are not asking you to conserve any more water. We are asking you to use the most efficient means of doing the exact same things you're doing today. Taking just as many showers, doing just as many loads of wash, doing just as many dishes, but doing it with equipment that in today's marketplace saves money. Every person who uses a top-loading washing machine wastes 30 gallons of water every load of wash. Now, I'm not telling that person you can't use that top-loading machine, but I'm saying when you're going to change it, please use the efficiency, and this district should assist in making that possible. So I reject the argument that we're asking you to do something different. I reject the argument that conservation isn't new water. I reject the argument that we cannot control the fact that if we aren't getting the savings we expect, that we can't immediately put a moratorium back on. And I think it's time to move forward. And this is a procedural thing. This is a procedural thing that's necessary to move on to the next step, and so I'm going to support this.
Okay.
Ms.
Thank you.
Ronet.
Well, first of all, I have to say to my fellow directors here, too, I think you say many things that certainly I would say that we've all been through. I would like to talk a little more about the in lieu of fee. Again, that term kind of means, well, what, in lieu of what? It is, and in my mind, and I think I'm correct on this, This is a fee that people on the wait list will pay that is separate from the connection fee. And I think that needs to be really clear. And that fee, as far as I understand, and that's the premise I've been working on, that fee will go right back into this community, into the budget, that will be used only, is quite earmarked, will only be used in retrofit measures that are used in this community, either with the single-family residence or commercial. So that's where that money goes. The connection fee that would be charged, and I think we have some misunderstandings there, is what is allowed by law. When you go to pay for already existing utilities and that type of thing, there's some very clear regulations on what a connection fee can be used for, and we are following that too. So I would just like to say, to clarify those two things. Another thing is too, and I have said this in our meetings with the conservation, I really want to see in this, because this is a lot and it is complex. And I will tell you, none of us takes it lightly. No one here on this board or in this room would want to think that they were blatantly being totally disregarding of the most conservative practice possible. And when we talk about the wait list and what we're doing, that is not a permanent thing. That will be evaluated as we move forward. But I would also like to, rather than just having in lieu of fees, and that was a good explanation, we certainly know then what's been retrofitted, I would like to do this too. Right now we have some things that are incentives. We have the rebate on the washing machine and a few other things. We certainly can do better than that. But I would like what I would call, if you will, a retrofit wait list. I thought maybe one more wait list in Cambria might be a good idea. But the retrofit wait list would be for, there are so many wonderful people in this community, and they don't have either the opportunity or the inclination to come and join us. But I want this to be very much an outreach and very inclusive and very transparent. And I would like for people that may just be living here right now and thinking, well, I would like to have a rebate on a washing machine. I would like a better dishwasher that's, again, more water efficient, all the other water use things, the toilet and all of that, but I can't afford it. And I really want it just because I want to manage my own water and be efficient, and I want to keep my own water bill down. And I think, again, Director Clift and both Rice, too, no one here is asking for our community to cut back and be water starved, so to speak, just so somebody can develop. That has never been the idea. But I do think that there are people who simply know, looking, of course, at many things you've all mentioned from the audience, trends, history and weather, that all of us want to be water efficient simply as a prudent, thoughtful person on this planet. But what about people that are here in our community right now that think, well, I would like to have that incentive. I would like to have my house retrofitted, but I cannot afford it. And so I would like for those who develop that either we don't have the points, so they can't pay for the in lieu of fees, or they would just rather have their neighbors. If their neighbors would like to have their house completely retrofitted, then they can pay for that. And it would be monitored by the CSD, so we would know that it gets implemented. Because there have to be people that think, well, I can't afford to do all that. Well, I think then we should have an outreach and make it a benefit to the community. I hope that's clear. I hope I'm making sense on that. But to me, it's one other way, rather than just having retrofits, you know, that don't seem to be open to everybody. They should be open to everybody. I think that's all I have at this point.
Okay. Thank you. If Director Rice would like to
I've gathered my brain
say something
thoughts again.
before I weigh in on it.
Just not before you weigh in, if you'd like to
No,
weigh
no,
in
no,
first.
I'd
All
rather-
right, I just, a couple of things. I have a few concerns. First concern, these are in no particular priority order, just the order I thought of them, frankly. I don't see anywhere in here, I see a policy in here that's listed about revocations of intent to serve. I don't see anything about extensions. We've just had an extension today that was 12 times the person got the extension. Previous extensions, they were just as many extensions, annual extensions. It concerns me, here's why it concerns me that there isn't a limit on the number of times you can request an extension. If I'm number 2 on the list and I get an intent to serve letter, if I can just get extensions for indefinitely, why wouldn't I take my letter of intent and just continue to get extensions and not actually build my house? It increases the value of my property immensely, which I don't own any property, I'm speaking hypothetically. It increases the value of my property if I just accept it, even if I don't intend to build. Frankly, right now, even if I don't intend to build, I'm going to take it anyway. I know the county isn't giving out any building, they're not allocating any building permits, so I could just hang on to it, and it increases the value of my property. Now, I know we have an exception for while there is a 0% on the GMO that says that their time limit doesn't count, there is a time limit, but it doesn't say that they can't get an extension, does it?
That's actually governed by another section of the code that we haven't brought forward because it currently gives discretion to the board to grant any extensions. The board could determine not to grant an extension like Mr. Eady's this evening, and that would be it.
But
But that's an existing code section.
isn't it true, though, just to alleviate your concern, is that once the letter goes out, it gets attached to a property, it doesn't move. You have to have a building permit, you have to move on, so it's a different than one of these floating
Waitlisted
waitlisted
position.
positions.
There's also language in the code currently that provides that intent to serve letters are revocable by the district at any time. So there are those kind of provisions that.
But, yeah, okay, okay, so if you have an intent to serve letter, it's not going to be transferable? If I get a letter of intent, I can't transfer it from one property to another?
Can I speak to some of
Yeah.
that, having worked on the administrative part, just as kind of a point of order, I guess? Because actually, I have quite a few things I would like to make included yet, because I did check. We can still include today new things in the resolution, is my understanding. Because there are things that have to do with the intent to serve letters to the point of never selling with the property, because I do believe that is speculative totally. So it's a kind of thing, where do we get into, just point of order, where do we get into, after we've reviewed all this from page 80 to 142 as we have, where we all kind of start as a board to give our additional input, things that somehow didn't make it in, or that we would like to have changed a bit? Where do we do that?
There's a couple, first, let me comment on that, and then let me point out a couple of things that are otherwise in the code on the issue of being able to transfer an intent to serve letter. And that is, certainly if the board wants to make changes today that we can accomplish today and still adopt the resolution and introduce the ordinance, we'll do that. If, however, there are things that are more complex than that and require more thought, or making sure that we're coordinating with other sections of the code that will take time to review, then we simply have to continue these items and bring it back to a subsequent meeting once those provisions are clarified. As far as the concerns about the intent to serve letters, Jerry had mentioned that had been brought up to him by one of the board members in terms of the ability to sell them or transfer them. And currently in the code, and it's not something being suggested for change, things are rather complex as far as how things are structured, and we have things called positions. And positions are defined to include a parcel that has a valid intent to serve letter, among other things. And there's a section on assignment of positions, and a position is assignable to a new owner of the same parcel only upon sale of the parcel and approval of an application for assignment by the general manager. So it has to be with the parcel. You can't just sell your intent to serve letter for another parcel. And then positions, again, an intent to serve letter on a parcel, otherwise would be subject to the transfer provisions in the code that currently exist, which, as you know, requires retirement of lots and all these other things. So I think that's where it's all covered.
Okay. Okay.
Sorry, on that, is it?
No, it's not on that subject.
I just had a couple of other concerns. Let me get them out, and then I'll shut up and listen for a while. I sure hope that if we do actually send some letters out, I hope we're contacting folks that are on the wait list about things like this meeting going on, that we include in a letter the fact that that we're working with the county on modifying the GMO, so that they're aware that that getting the letter of intent isn't the end of the road for actually building. I just want to make sure that we're doing that and being responsible about that. I do hear and completely agree with the concerns about follow-up on installation of more efficient fixtures. It would be good. I think Tina Dickinson at one point recommended that people turn in their old shower head when they get their new ones, or after they get their new ones, so that we have a way to verify that it is installed. Now, a shower head is nothing in terms of water savings compared to, say, a washing machine, but it is something, and it is enough to make a difference. And then the other thing is, when we don't know what the saturation rate is in terms of efficient fixtures and how many houses could be retrofitted, but as soon as we run out of places to retrofit, nobody else is going to be able to build because they can't find a place to actually conserve additional water. So if that's 5 houses in or 100 houses in, as soon as we don't have any place else that we can use water more efficiently, or any other ways of managing our water in better ways, then we are out of places to get water without having an additional water source. So I just wanted to say that. And in terms of the Conservation Committee, when we met, what we did discuss, I think it's important to have some community input on the way that the 22 measures that Mid-House has outlined that we could be saving water. It would be really good to get a citizens committee together to look at those and figure out which priorities might be best for the ones that we haven't started to implement already. Because I think that there's a lot of smart people in this town that want to be responsible about our resources, all of them. So I'm done.
Thank you. And if I could weigh in just a little bit, I agree with Mr. Cliff's comments and others. I'd like to kind of bring it back more to the public, some of the public comments that I took. One is that this has been about 10 years. We've been in no building situation for over 10 years. This process right here, trying to get this particular code change, is imperfect at best, but it's a process that we've gone through. We've had public comments. We've been talking about it for many months. It's not a surprise to anyone. And it's not the project we really need. It's not going to make me feel any better about the problems that we have as far as water in this town. We need an alternative water source, in my opinion, independent of rainfall, that will protect our current citizens. We need our current citizens protected, and I think it's an additional water source. What we're trying to do is allocate the amount of water we have now in a conservative manner in order to be able to allow a few to test to see if the theories that we have are in fact working. And we are trying to put the horse before the cart. We need this code to be changed for some policies and some, according to Ms. Bettenhausen was saying, hey, who's going to draft the policy? This is a policy that we're making a decision on today. What are the administrative procedures? They're the administrative procedures we have today. It's not perfect. How are we going to measure those things? Yes, those are questions we need to understand. Do we have an intent on measuring the actual use? Yes, we do. We're not putting our our lives in jeopardy. So to answer Ms. Bentenhausen, essentially, we are in fact beginning that. It's not a project. The project that we're trying to get is an alternative water supply, and we're going to continue to do that. And in my opinion, that's the most important thing for me, for this town. There were some concerns about fire protection and issues like that. Those are issues we're still working on. We have other items on the agenda. We're trying to increase the amount of storage we have locally. But whether we have a few extra homes or not isn't going to make a difference whether we're going to be able to put a fire out. That's an entirely different issue. The water that we use for a fire is going to be used up in a few hours, so it's not an extra home that's going to take a shower tomorrow. And we're not going to have any kind of explosive growth. Who's going to be part-time? Some part-timers are going to coming into town, and they're going to retire, and they're going to now take that home that was part-time and they're going to live in it. Other people are going to pass away, unfortunately, and the person that's going to buy that home is probably going to be a part-timer. There's always going to be a percentage. It's going to be a percentage. We're never going to be 100% saturated. We're always going to have vacation rentals. We're always going to have people that are on vacation rentals. It might vary in time, but it's not going to go from 30% occupancy or non-occupancy to zero. I just don't think that that's really an issue. I do have a bias, and I think that if you hand me a shower head and you use it as a retrofit point, you shouldn't, is my opinion, because it's got to be installed. Who knows whether it's really going to be installed? Who knows? And one shower head, what good is that? You have 2 showers now in the house. You know, it's really not making that much difference. However, if you look at the code and you look in detail at the code, there are strong provisions that every time a house is sold, it's going to be inspected. It's going to be inspected to have all of its retrofits done. If you look at the code, the details are that instead of going from what I have, I built not too long ago, about 7 years ago, I have a 1.6 gallon toilet, which is pretty good. If I sold that house, it would have to be upgraded, even though and somebody yesterday could have put a 1.6 gallon toilet in their home. If they sell, they have to retrofit the entire house. Now that's what I call retrofit points. That's where it really becomes valuable. If you look at the code says, and I believe this is true, I read it on the airplane, again, the changes, that if you were to build a deck on your house and it didn't include a spigot or a sink, you wouldn't have to do anything. If it included a sink, you'd have to or a toilet, you'd have to have the most efficient toilet. If you sold your house or if you added square footage, you have to retrofit your entire house. Those are retrofit points I think are valuable. So from that perspective, I tend to think that I agree with a lot of people. How do you know anybody's been retrofitted? But if a house sells, even in 2 years from now, if a house were to sell, we're going to continue to ratchet that acceptable fixtures down, and the Medeiros report generally shows that. Even if we did nothing, the reduction in water use in Cambria is going to go down. Medeiros really showed that to us. I really appreciate Ms. Webb's letter. Unfortunately, I just got it now. I think she always does a fantastic job. And one thing that we haven't talked about in this particular course of discussion is the environment and how we're going to protect the fish. I think that's a much bigger issue. I tend to think that if we get a new water supply, I'd like to devote part of that, I think I mentioned it to Mr. Hawley, part of that additional production toward the environment. And I think the community would pay money to help support the environment in this area. So, but that's a different issue. That's on the big project on our alternative water source problem. And I have opened it up for after the board discussion for people to come back and talk about that. Maybe Mr. Hellman didn't get that information, but after the board brought this, after the information came to the board and board discussed it, for today on this item, I suggested that we add other comments, but I do reject the fact that we're growing. Revenue is up by 20%. I don't know where that comes from. I do know excuse me, that the bed tax went up 13% over the last couple of years. And when the county looks at revenue coming from this town, they're looking at increased bed tax revenue, but a lot of that is because we raised it up several percent. We raised the tax 2%. Also, it's not true that we have the lowest number of properties for sale in history. I know I've been talking to the realtors lately, and they have quite a few. And the biggest issue is the fact that we're always going to have property vacancies. So with that said, I'd be glad to bring it back, and if Mr. Hillman would like, but I reject the fact that anybody on this board is biased, period.
The one issue that we haven't talked about is the issue that, about the retaining the money.
Will we have?
For the retrofit?
Retrofit fees? Yeah, for it to be applied toward conservation programs, we can apply it anywhere we want. But yeah, I think the intent of the board is to.
But if it's revoked, though, we
okay.
keep the fees. But if there's only 5 points left and somebody's already bought them, but then they have their thing revoked, then we don't have any points to sell, and so somebody has to wait.
And I think what I would like to do today, if possible, is if we have some modifications, we can make some modifications if they're minor. But if we can always come back and make minor, there's going to be.
I can live with that.
There will be a myriad of items, I think, that the general manager is going to want to bring back to us that says, hey, how are we going to track this, how are we going to do that? And it's a process, but the horse before the cart today is to get something in next month. In fact, if we have minor words that we want to change because we have to reintroduce it again. We don't have to reintroduce it again, but
if any changes are made to the ordinance after it's introduced, it would have to be reintroduced
Okay.
before it could be adopted.
So I suggest that if any board members have specific wording that they want to add, I'd be more than happy to entertain that. But prior to that, Ms. Dickinson has another opportunity to chat a bit if she'd like to come on up. I don't think I turned the clock on before, and I was hoping that your rebuttals would be brief.
Tina Dickinson, Cambria again. Mr. Clift, in your comments regarding the moratorium, am I understood, the retractions you asked the Cambrian to make a couple of weeks ago, 3 retractions on publications from the Cambrian. My understanding is that you were the one that asked for those retractions, and am I understanding this correctly, that the moratorium has been lifted or not? I need an answer because this was already, he brought the points up.
He did bring the point up, and I would like you to be able to make a comment on the rebuttal.
Okay.
And if the director wants to
All right,
reply after
fine.
all of the, okay, please, that would be great.
Okay, Mr. Clift, Director Clift, and Director Rice went to the Board of Supervisors meeting on May 21st, asking for the GMO, the Growth Management Ordinance, to be changed from 0 to 1%. That was Tuesday, May 21st. On May 23rd, the Planning Department sent a letter to Mr. Gruber. Mr. Gruber, a project description is a detailed description of exactly what the amendments will contain. This is important as it is used in the environmental determination pursuant to CEQA. A good first step towards understanding what the amendments will ultimately contain would be to understand what you are proposing as your program. In your letter, you mentioned
Ms.
that...
Dickinson, we did get the letters.
But the public hasn't. You may have. This is the secret game that you play. The public does not know. So I'll go down to the part I would have liked to have read that.
Please, please.
I also want to let you know that your website still appears to contain information that indicates that you will serve letters won't be issued until the moratorium is lifted and other similar information in FAQs. This is what I just downloaded yesterday on your website, water conservation. Water conservation is a way of life for drought-sensitive Cambria. The town's current moratorium and intermittent water surcharges have motivated residents to employ stringent water conservation measures. for more information, contact the CCAC. This is still on your website.
Thank you
They
for
have
bringing it.
asked you about
Okay.
it on May 20, no, I'm not going to stop. The public
I'm not
needs to
asking you to
know.
stop. I'm saying thank
The
you.
public needs to know.
Thank you for the information.
Mr. Gruber replied on June 28th, and he never addressed in this two-page letter anything regarding the moratorium.
Correct.
It is, the proof is in the pudding as far as water. There is no proof in that pudding, and that pudding is decreasing, namely water. You guys
Thank you.
have really, you're screwing up terribly, and the whole town, or at least most of it, is realizing it. We're going to stop you one way or the other.
Thank you, Ms. Dickinson. We don't have a project in place, but, no, we don't. Ms. Karen Dean, please. Karen Dean? No, any way you like.
My name is Karen Dean.
Yes.
I have a couple of questions. Ms. Robinette addressed the connection fee, but I don't feel like I got a good explanation of what the money from the connection fee was going to be used for. I understand that the retrofit fees and the in lieu fees are supposed to help with the conservation efforts, but what is the connection fee used for? I realize you are allowed to charge a connection fee, but I'd like to know what that money is used for. I understand that we have a very old infrastructure here. Is that what that money is going to be used for? Also, you're saying that if we did nothing but to continue to conserve, we're still water ahead. Why can't we save that water in case we have a contamination of a well, or if we have a fire, a major fire that really drains our water? Why can't we save that water? If the reason behind issuing letters of intent now is to get the money, is there another way we can get money to help with the infrastructure? Can we change the rates that we are all paying on water? I think some of us would rather save the water in case of an emergency and pay a little bit more for the water we're using. Can we do a bond issue to fix the infrastructure? Is there some way we can do something other than using the water we're saving right now before we find a new source of water? Also, the only other thing I have to say is my question about the conflict of interest was not addressed. One of the other speakers brought up that there's possibly a member of the board that has an intent to serve that already has property, a home here. So I would like to ask if council could answer the question, if the board is not going to, on whether it is a conflict of interest to vote on issuing intent to serve letters if someone is on the board is holding intent to serve letters. That's
Okay.
it. Thank you.
Thank you for the comment. And Elizabeth Bettenhausen, please.
Ask him to read it.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I'm glad to hear the comment that this is policy adopted by the board, that will be certainly, nobody doubts that, and procedures adopted by the board today. But I want to point out that if you adopt this today, as it now reads, if I were rich, I'd say, hey, I'm going to start building on new property here in town, because on page 125, I don't have to prove that I'm using any of the new equipment that's green. I just have to sign this paper. And then it says, in the event it is determined, I love this kind of passive voice, in the event it is determined that excessive water use is occurring on the property, CCSD shall endeavor to work cooperatively with the property owner to determine the cause. Now, friends, I would like to know, what are the numbers in there? How will you, as a board, determine what constitutes excessive water use? If I build my house with 14 bedrooms and 16 toilets, and then I invite a whole lot of my relatives, I had 71 first cousins to come, hey, we might have a pretty high water use there. And at the top of page 121, it talks about me, members of the community as well as property owners, need to be fully aware and have confidence in the manner in which the interim issuance of intent to serve letters is to be administered, et cetera. Dear Board, you know this already, but I'm going to say it out loud. I do not have confidence in how you're going to do this because your policy is somewhat okay. Your procedures are stunningly vague. And if I want to overuse water in this town, your procedures basically give me the permission so long as it sits well with my conscience.
Thank you. Jean Mathalis? I'm killing that name. Matullis. Matullis. Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to just speak very briefly. By the way, I officially returned my shower head to the CCSD.
So we should dock a point on there.
Dock a point. But I just wanted to respond to this assumption. Seemed like a rather glaring assumption that when a person passes, it's going to pass over to somebody, that's going to be sold to somebody who, like, somewhere down the road in 30 years might come and live here. That's nonsense. There's a real big demand, and there is a baby boom, as one of our previous speakers indicated. Pardon me?
No, it
Well,
was not
the baby boomers are coming, and it's a good thing. But the fact is that that's an assumption that has absolutely no foundation whatsoever. And then where I live, across the street, next door, and catty corner to me, are 3 second homes, and these people are all planning to come and live. And so I think that that's something that really has been not taken into account. And I heard a rumor, I hope it's not true, but I heard a rumor that some of the people in the board perhaps think of some of the people who come up and talk to you at these meetings referred to as screaming memes. This is something that I heard. I hope it's not true, but the fact is that we should be taken seriously. I know you're very patient and kind. You're sitting there listening to us. But the fact is you need to really listen, because these points are good, and frankly, it just isn't justified. And perhaps I used hyperbole when I referred to it earlier as an explosion. But the fact is that it's like a kid with a piggy bank who saves his little precious pennies, and then he can't control himself, and he just blows the pennies like the next day, and then he has an empty piggy bank again. We're saving water desperately. We're taking extraordinary measures, and then to just blow it by just building up more houses and with more water usage is irresponsible. And I just wanted to be heard on that. Thank you.
Thank you. And Nancy Anderson, please.
Good afternoon. I'm Nancy Anderson, and I am a homeowner here. My only home is here in Cambria, and I have some questions that I'd like to address to the board. I have not seen anything in the paper. I may have missed it, and perhaps that's my fault. But I was hoping to see something about this conservation plan, and I haven't seen it. I'm wondering when we will receive this conservation plan. Does it include more than just retrofit? What are the regulations in terms of watering a yard, watering plants? I think everybody here has already spoken about the way that they're conserving. In my home, we have new washing machine, new dryer, new dishwasher. We went to a great deal of expense to install tanks to collect the water from our roof. So we've done a lot already, but I'm wondering about what's happening, for example, with the motels and hotels. What kind of conservation is happening there? Are there any suggested ways that they can approach the people who come to stay here? Is there any kind of limitations? How many times can a toilet be flushed? How many times can people, there's really no information that we're receiving, and so I'm wondering when that will happen.
Thank you. And potentially last, or others if they'd like, Mary Webb, please.
Mary Webb, Green Space, I just wanted to thank you for the way that you're doing this meeting, where you're letting people come back and say something after you've, had a conversation. I think that's a really excellent way to try to do something like this. These are really complicated matters, and someone really smart who's not here today said, the position we're in now, we need a trifecta of solutions. What I'm seeing is that the first solution is always to grow again. It's not to address all the other pieces that fit into this puzzle. And the other thing is, one of the directors has taken, Tom Lester, California Coastal Commission, a paragraph out of a 5-page letter, and read, what he reads from that one paragraph. But the 5-page letter has to be taken into its totality, just like the appeals over the last 13 years have to be taken into the totality. There are myriads of decisions and recommendations that have been made over the last 13 years that have to be taken into consideration before just opening the wait list. I just don't see, well, like I said, the board does not agree that that's the way to go. If you are going to go this way, I wonder, are you sitting down and meeting with the Coastal Commission? I highly advise you get together and just have them as staff sit in the same room and go through these points that need to be addressed. Just like, having a riparian user up San Simeon Creek be blindsided and say something in the paper that he's blindsided that we're doing this, I highly recommend you meet with the ranchers and make sure they don't just start using all the water they want to use up the creek, because, by God, the Cambria CSD is going to take the water if we don't. These are the things that can happen based on what we're doing in this way. And then rather than making these adversaries, the Coastal Commission's your adversary, or State Parks is your adversary, or SLO County is your adversary, or the riparian users are your adversary, or the environmentalists. We are not adversaries. We are all here. We love where we live. I love this environment. It is the most beautiful place to live. I've been here for 25 years. I feel so lucky. And everybody I know says the same thing. They want to try to keep a handle and keep this place in some kind of situation where we're not just Dana Point blowing out and all of a sudden we're just in this giant mess and we have no water, and then we need 17,000 more people here to try to fix it all. You can't ever go back. So I just would recommend that you go slow, meet with the agencies that will give you approvals on these things. Otherwise, we're all just going to spend a whole bunch of money in court or something, which is such a total waste of time. Thank you.
Thank you. And I apologize, I didn't call Susan Shaver.
Good afternoon again, and thank you again. I have 7 points, so I will try to make them as succinctly as possible. The first has to do with Director Cliff's comment about whether there is or is not a moratorium, and I second the comments of a previous speaker. There's confusion because the CCSD website does speak of a moratorium in place since November 2001, and Mr. Hirsch authored an opinion from March of 2011, I believe March 16th, telling CCSD that the moratorium was in full force and effect and would remain so. I am unaware of a subsequent opinion from Mr. Hirsch or anyone else, and I'd love to read it, and I can provide my email to anyone who would provide it to me. So yes, there is confusion about that, and that's because the information available to the public is talking about a moratorium being in full force and effect. The second point I'd like to make is, again, Director Cliff, concerning your comment about conservation being water. I disagree that conservation represents either water or new water. Contracted water is not new water, it's paper water. And conservation, it just simply is not a new water source. Third point is, we're talking about conservation, and it's a wonderful goal, it's an aspirational goal, it's difficult to measure, but however we measure it, there's an end game to how much a resident can conserve water. And we're talking about shower heads, washing machines. Once everything that we can engineer to save water is in place, they're still using water. Fourth point is that we had a speaker talk about your responsibility to develop property for people who own property without water. You can look, and Mr. Hirsch can look, even the United States Supreme Court has spoken, your paramount responsibility is to protect existing water users, not to provide water to people who don't have water yet, to people who, most of whom, I think in 1995 was the first property I bought here. From that time on, we were told, realtors told us, all the websites told us, there likely will be no water. You heard this from a previous speaker. Your responsibility is to existing water users. My fifth point, we are talking about conserving water in per capita units. That's, again, a great aspirational goal. But what you have to look at is the total water that we're using. We have your own estimate that we're going to use, hold on, somewhere between 724.74 acre feet and 748.1 something acre feet, I can't read it, this year. That's an increase. That's an increase over our use. You have data from 1988 through 2013, full data for 24 years. In 12 of those years, water use has gone up. In 12 of those years, water use has gone down. If you look at the years in which water use has gone up, it's been after the moratorium was in place, or whatever we're going to call it here, after there were no new water permits issued, and after we had some conservation methods in place. My sixth point was to talk to you about the tables, which I just did. And my final point is we're talking about the conservation and the water levels. These are clear. This is clear data that our wells are dropping. You look at this table, which was up on the screen earlier today, and our levels, we had a dip below our lowest ever level, and we have some explanation because that was because of a loss. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But look at the trend. Our current use is near the record low. It's below the average. And it's, of course, well below the maximum, but it's even below the average. So how does our current plan, even with no letters of intent, comply with the requirement that we have a plan to reduce these usages 20% by the year 2020? How are we complying with that when we're going to issue new letters of intent?
Thank you for your comment. Before Mr. Hellman, I'd like to address the, let him go ahead. Okay, Jeff, you can.
And Jeff Hillman, Cambria. Just before I get into my typical, thing, I'd like to say to Director Behringer, thanks for running such a good meeting. It's been a long time since I felt so much receptivity from somebody who was directing one of the meetings. Just a side note, I don't tend to be complimentary a lot
Ever
of the time.
Again.
But what I would like to say in the rebuttal part, I think it was my hiking buddies. One of my hiking buddies gets the Tribune, and he said the Tribune reported that the revenue for the county, and that means a total revenue, I think they said 20 or 30%. So if you look into town, if you just drive into town and try to go to the post office to find a parking spot, you're going to have a really hard time these days. Also, the time I've been living here and watching, I kind of, looking, everybody looks to see what's going on here. I do believe that we're sort of at a low point for places that are for sale. So I don't think things are dying. I really don't. In fact, and I want to give there's two more things I wanted to say. I think we have two time bombs facing us. We all know about global warming. We all know about the drying up of water. We all know that 95% of all weather scientists, climatologists, believe that we are in a global warming situation which is going to cause droughts in the West. I think we have to look at that. And I think one more time bomb we do have, with all due respect to your comments, Cambria will become, if Cambria follows the lead of many, many other California cities that were at one time isolated small coastal towns, we're going to have a lot higher percentage of people living here than we do now. Santa Monica, Santa Cruz. I lived in Bolinas from 1970 to 76. That's a 2,000-person coastal town. When I moved north of San Francisco, about an hour, when I moved there, I bet you only about 20% of the houses were being lived in. By the time I left there, almost every house was a full-time house. What other? Laguna Beach. Laguna Beach was once an isolated, out-of-the-way Nobody is there. A few people had summer homes there. Now it's a full-time, and I think you would have to extrapolate that the trend is for towns like this, within proximity to other towns,
Yeah.
to seeing a growing occupation rate.
I stand corrected.
And I often do too, I have to admit. Just last but least, this isn't Keynesian economics. People talk about Keynesian economics. That's when you're supposed to deficit spend in bad times, but no one ever really implements Keynesian economics because you're supposed to save during the good times so you have it for the bad times. You're supposed to, it's called a rainy day fund. Well, we should have a non-rainy days fund, and that means not use every bit of water you can squeeze out of conservation, but have a buffer. Give us a break. Let us have some latitude here so that we don't have to suffer because the judgment of the board was wrong. And thank you.
Thank you.
As far as the issue that was raised about Board Member Robinette and being a wait list holder, my understanding is she has been in touch with the Fair Political Practices Commission, and they have given her guidance regarding that issue, and so she might want to comment further regarding that.
Thank you. This is going to be difficult. I do want to comment on this because I'm feeling like a dirty little secret. I have had people here in this audience today make innuendo. I don't know if it's just gossip, if it's rumor or what, but I can tell you, walk in my shoes and see how it feels. It is not a good thing. First of all, I need to reassure you, yes, I have a wait list number. I didn't know that made me lesser. But I will also tell you that I have heard the words that have now besmirched the whole board: conflict of interest, unethical, all of this because of me. I have to tell you something. I have had a stellar career in my life. I have always been highly regarded. I have always and will continue to have the highest ethics. There are some people in this room that know that before I took this responsibility, of course I knew my facts. When you accuse me, you do not know your facts yet. And I would advise that in your future, make it a learning moment. If you, in fact, know something because you've researched it and know it to be true, that's one thing. If someone has put you up to this, that's unfortunate. There are people in this audience right now who know, in fact, that I have already gone to the Fair Political Practices Commission. And in fact, I shared it with Mary Webb because I felt it was very important because I respect you. And I wanted you to know that. And you've known this for well over a year. So I'm going to read for you what I did. I had my own legal counsel at my own expense. And I wanted to make absolutely sure that there was no possible conflict. So last year, this is what I got from my attorney, Ashley Titus, with Bell, McAndrews, and Hilltack, and they are in Sacramento. And this is based on the request that I got the advice. And this is what it says from the Fair Political Practices Commission. This is a written response. This is not an over-the-phone opinion. It was that important to me. It was expensive, but it meant a lot to me to do the right thing and never to put this community in an embarrassing situation by me having to be a bad secret. I am not. It hurts me. This is very difficult. Trust me. This is what it says. Dear Ms. Titus, this letter responds to your request for advice regarding the conflict of interest provisions of the Political Forum Act and is based on the facts presented. The Fair Political Practices Commission does not act as a finder of fact when it renders advice. Please note that our advice is based on this act. The question: does the act prohibit Ms. Robinette, a board member of the Cambria Community Service District, who owns undeveloped property in the district and is on a waiting list for a water connection, from participating in decisions to lift a moratorium? I know we talk about the word moratorium. We're talking about water code moratorium on new water connections and activate the waiting list. Or B, explore alternative water sources for the district. Conclusion from the Fair Political Practices Commission in California. Their conclusion is no. The financial effect of the decisions on Ms. Robinette's real property is indistinguishable from the effect on the public generally. This is all in code. This is all in the California Code under the Fair Political Practices. I'm sorry to have the awkwardness of taking up your valuable time and the time of this board and the CSD staff for this. On the other hand, perhaps this will clear the air on it so that we can get back to the very important business that we are about. We are trying to do things absolutely a step at a time, and I really have to tell you, this is very difficult for me. I feel embarrassed. I feel humiliated. I feel that my own personal reputation has been under fire. I have never had people use words against me like you have. You all that were doing this knew who you were talking about. You didn't come up and talk to me personally. So, yeah, I don't know what to say. I will only say this. I will never give up having compassion. And the people that were feeling they needed to sort of bring this to a head must have had some very important reasons to them. But I would always leave my door open for you to come and talk to me about anything, anytime. And I just have to say, I made some notes because it is tough when it's personal. It's tough when it's your own personal private life. But by golly, you wanted to drag it out here, so here it is. And Kathy, I hope you'll be kind, because I am not the kind of person who likes to have the spotlight put on me in this manner. It has never happened to me before. I would hope it doesn't in the future. But I will tell you right now, I found it insulting, if not slanderous. I would always ask that you talk with me or anybody else, review your facts, and I would say that it is, before you accuse, know the facts, always treat others, I did make notes on this, always treat others, including me, as you would want to be treated. And that means with dignity, regard, and respect. That is how I will continue to treat everyone. Now, I would like to get back to some of the other things that we're working on, but this has been hinted at, and I think it has now been brought up 3 times this afternoon. So that's all. I probably said more than I need to, but maybe I needed to get it out too.
Thank you, Ms. Robinette.
I hope you're not bringing me into it, Gail.
No, I'm not, Mary. I just...
I did not write a letter. I didn't put anything in the paper. I'm not intimating to anyone that you're doing something wrong. I happened to research the wait list years ago because I was tired of being accused of, being the naysayers and the people in the audience. We've been out here talking for 13 years. The people on the wait list were hiding behind the wait list. No one ever knew who they were. So I researched the wait list, but I have nothing to do. You did tell me that you had talked to your lawyer and that things were fine. I didn't put anything in the paper, so I just want to make sure you clear my name.
I have to tell you, I could
you.
give you a hug. If there's one person sitting here today that I knew was not involved, it was you.
Oh, well, that's
because
good to
I
know.
had enough.
I just wanted to be sure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Mary, I love you, Mary.
No, I think we've, I would like to close the public hearing on this item, and I would accept a...
Are we ready for a motion?
We can make a motion and discuss.
Do we
If we're
need
ready
to
to
do
make a
more?
motion and discuss, I'm closing the public hearing. Can I do that?
Is this a multiple motion, or is it a split of a resolution and ordinance?
Well, it's a split in the sense, certainly you can close the public
Okay.
hearing.
Public hearing.
But there's a resolution to be adopted today that includes the administrative policy and the exhibits that used to be in the code, the list of acceptable and prohibited devices, and also the equivalency table. That can be adopted today. The ordinance, we would still need to go through the process of reading by title only, waiving further reading, and then introducing the ordinance. That would be brought back at the next meeting for adoption. And I also had intended that at the next meeting we would have the resolution establishing the in lieu fee.
Sorry, I just have one more question on,
Sure, go
on
for
if we, the resolution includes the policies?
That's correct.
Okay.
So if there are changes to be made to any of the documents, that needs to be done.
Because one of the things that it seems like has kind of come up, I think the retrofit point and a lot of the language in here is, it works except for the instead of in lieu. I'm still wrapping my brain around that linguistic oddity. But part of the discussion today has brought up that maybe we need to be cleaning up our transfer policies, our codes on transferring, so that we don't cause an issue where we're giving an essentially additional value, additional commodity to a property. And then the other issue that seems to be relevant is we don't have and haven't considered the connection fees, and I don't know if that needs to be done prior to us, because are we supposed to, is this the day that we're supposed to say, okay, let's do 2, let's do 50, or we're not there yet?
No, we're not there.
Okay.
We're not issuing letters, we're just
I
getting
just
the
want to be
code
clear
cleaned
what
up
I'm
a little.
voting on, because there's so many issues. Next time, can we have these separated as, I know the discussion is all interrelated, but there's so much going on in this particular item that
Yes,
I
sir.
just want to make sure I know what I'm,
Mr.
You bring
Gruber
up,
may be
you
gonna
bring up
address
a
this.
good point. There are ongoing and constant improvements, if you will, to the municipal code. And as far as the concerns that you addressed, District Council and I met prior to this meeting, and those are the things, those are the type of things we need to hear from you. And I think we've seen a trend over the last couple of years that we're continuously bringing improvements to the municipal code back to you. So if it's, as Director Cliff said, if it's not perfect right now, you know, our goal is to continuously improve this document, because it has kind of sat on a shelf for a while. And a municipal code for a city or a special district needs to continuously be reviewed and improved and made more relevant to the codes that are actually being implemented. And so it's an ongoing process.
I'd like to make a suggestion that maybe we have a sunset for this particular item. That way we do have an opportunity to review it. And I mean, that's one of the things that has been recommended in a lot of legislative situations where you have something, you know, these laws that have been in place forever and ever, and nobody ever looks at them again. I think it's not a bad idea. I mean, I'm not uncomfortable with what's here. I just want to make sure that we have an opportunity, that this isn't just it going forward.
Right.
And I know we have assurances, but maybe some sort of.
Director Cliff?
And the board can certainly provide direction regarding bringing things back for review at any point in time.
Director Cliff might have a comment.
Can, in the resolution part, can we simply add that this will have a 5-year or 10-year life?
Well, I think it's a little more complex than that, because, you know, in thinking about it, it might be best to introduce the ordinance today and then bring back the resolution and the ordinance both for adoption at the next meeting, just so it doesn't get confused in that regard. But, and the ordinance would be effective immediately under the provisions in the Water Code.
Okay.
As far as a sunset provision, I would want to look at all the documents, but again, the board can give that direction regardless of whether it's in the code. They could say, you know, 5 years from now, we want all this back for review, or any time short of that.
Well, my concern is that if we go ahead with the resolution today, 2 meetings or 3 meetings from now, we can add to that resolution, right? We can modify that resolution.
The resolution is certainly easier to adopt. Again, it contains the administrative policy, the reason to adopt things, the administrative policy and those tables and exhibits by resolution is because it's less cumbersome to amend through a resolution than it is an ordinance, which requires introduction and then
But
adoption.
we could adopt the resolution today and introduce the ordinance and direct staff to work on some form of a sunset clause to the resolution, or bring back a potential sunset clause 6 months from now.
Sure.
Just to be clear though, I tend to think that what we're doing is within the policy, we're saying that we're going to revise the tables on a regular basis, you know, so
Yeah.
we pulled that out of the code so that we're much more flexible to be able to change those tables, et cetera. I think the concern that Director Rice has, and I have, is that there's this other positions table and everything else that's going on, but in reading the ordinance that we're putting into place, it tightens up the ability to be able to change, you know, to be inspected. It really makes it tough when you sell a house. You really have to do everything. So it does, from a code perspective, it does what it needs to do, and we can address the other issues.
I don't have a problem with going forward today with the recommendations to adopt the resolution and introduce the ordinance. I'm just, and I don't have a problem with the belief that that this is not going to be looked at again. If you think that, you know, you got the real problems, because as we move along at each step, as we move along, this is going to be looked at again, and whether we like it or not. And so I think we probably have future places down the road to do it, but I want to make sure that Director Rice is at least her concerns about making sure that we do look at it at some future time. During the next year, my assumption is we're going to hear this.
Right.
As we move through each step, we're going to go back, there's going to be discussion.
So we might be adopting this ordinance numerous times in the next 12 months, is that what you're telling me?
Now,
at
the end of the process, if there's not a big problem, I could see putting a sunset clause on it so that somebody in the future will look at it.
Right. So I'm looking for a motion in order to discuss.
I move that I find the page. I'm sorry. I move that, see, we had the public hearing. What am I moving?
Adopt
I move that
resolution.
We adopt resolution, where is it? Oh, adopt resolution 19, 2013, and read by title only and introduce into ordinance 3-2013, period.
If I might ask,
Please.
is the language that I mentioned earlier regarding the revocation and refund of, or non-refunding of the retrofit fees also going to be addressed?
Could you read that into the record?
Let's look at, let's see, it's section 3, page, number 5. It's on page 5 of the administrative policy, which, let's see, is page 124 of your agenda packet. And we'd be talking about the second sentence.
124.
I just want to make sure that because the Administrative Policy Procedures Committee had indicated they were okay with this language, but it should be addressed by the board as a whole. And as I recall, Board Member Rice had a concern about it not being refunded. And so what I've done is created some alternative language if the board wants to change it, or you could adopt it as is.
Please introduce the language, and if the board agrees, we should adopt it as part of the ordinance.
The language to modify.
The language that you.
Yeah, to modify it, what I would suggest is changing the second sentence to read, "The general manager will calculate and apply retrofits actually completed by the applicant to future retrofit requirements for the same parcel. In the event retrofit in lieu fees were paid instead of performing retrofits, such fees shall be refunded to the applicant, and related retrofit points shall be returned to the points bank." And then at the same time, in the ordinance, it's Exhibit B, and it's Section 4.20030A5. There are a couple of sentences there that also relate to retrofit fees not being refundable. Delete those two sentences and substitute that with "any retrofit in lieu fees paid by the applicant shall be refunded, and related retrofit points shall be returned to the points bank."
if this, the Administrative Policy Committee concurs with that language, I would accept that.
Yes, we are saying that if someone gives the intent to serve letter back or whatever.
If it's revoked or and they've already bought points.
Right, then the points go back and the
points-
money gets refunded.
Mhm.
And yes, I think that's best for many reasons, yeah.
Yeah. So yes,
So
with that change.
So that it would be, so the motion would be to adopt the resolution with that change and also introduce the ordinance, but with the change that I read into the record for section 4.20030A5. And we also should be reading the title of the ordinance into
Thank
the
you.
record, which is ordinance amending chapters 4.16, 4.20, and 8.04 of the CCSD Municipal Code relating to water conservation devices, the water conservation and retrofit program,
And water and sewer
allocation
allocation.
in order to amend the water conservation and retrofit program and implement the water use efficiency plan and the interim issuance of intent to serve letters. That's ordinance 030-2013.
So moved.
Second.
Sorry, I missed rehearsal.
As advised. Let's take a roll call vote on this one, Ms. Choate.
Thank you, Mr. Hirsch.
Director Rice,
Yes.
Director Cliff,
Yes.
Director Robinette,
Yes,
and Acting President Barraker,
Yes.
and Director Thompson is absent.
Well, with that said, we can actually get to regular business. It should be fairly quick. Regular business is a discussion and consideration to appoint an ad hoc committee to provide for IAFF negotiations and dental plan for all CCSD. Mr. Gruber.
Thank you, Interim President Jim, Director Behringer. This item was brought before the board. As you know, we negotiated a one-year contract with IAFF. It's up in December. And so what staff is looking for is some guidance from an ad hoc committee. Monique Madrid and myself will be outlining some things that we would be presenting to this ad hoc committee with regards to upcoming labor negotiations. And there's some important things to consider when this committee is put together, such as we now have an ALS service and the duration of the agreement, things like that. And so we would just ask that the board would consider putting an ad hoc committee together that would work as a liaison between myself and the board to keep you up to date and to keep the process moving forward and to work collaboratively with the fire department. What may result out of this is maybe the recommendation that we hire somebody to do it for us or we do it in-house, but that's kind of where our thoughts were going with it.
Thank you, Mr. Gruber. Do you have nominations?
Well, the staff report, we recommend that it would be President Thompson and Director Clift.
I think that would be great. So what do we have to do? Say,
I move that we.
Just a motion.
I move that we create and appoint Director Thompson and Director Clift for an ad hoc committee for IAFF negotiations and dental plan for all CCSD employee groups.
I second the motion.
all in favor?
Are you agree? And is that okay?
That's all right.
Gosh, I hope so.
I hope that's okay.
Do I have to abstain since I don't benefit from this? I guess I don't have to abstain.
No, you don't have to abstain, I don't think.
No,
So
that's
all in
fine, that's
favor?
fine.
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
it's carried. Item 9B has been complete, so item 9C is discussion to consider adopt ordinance adding an informal bidding procedures. Mr. Gruber.
I'm going to go ahead and let the district council, this is the second time we're bringing this back to you, and there were some questions, but hopefully via email and conversations that I answered them all.
And again, we would need to read by title only, waive further reading, and in this instance, adopt this ordinance. This is ordinance 03-2013, an ordinance of the Board of Directors of the Cambria Community Service District, adding chapter 1.06 to provide informal bidding procedures under the Uniform Public Construction Cost Accounting Act, Section 22,000 et sequitur of the California Public Contracts Code.
I just have one question, because I don't know a lot about contracting, and maybe some people on the board have more experience with it. Can you help me understand that this is not going to cause a
President
problem?
Thompson and myself had a discussion with legal counsel and the general manager, and came to the determination that it doesn't decrease at all our ability to be able to put bids out in the normal manner in which we do. It just allows a little more flexibility. Instead of it starting at 15,000 or whatever, now it's 45,000, that there's more flexibility for the general manager to do what he wants to do. Also, anything he does has to come back to the board anyway, so it's nothing, I considered it was an administrative procedure that allows him to begin the bidding process, and anytime a bid is going to be approved, we approve it anyway. So
And you don't think it causes any reduction in the amount of oversight, that ability to oversee what's going on financially for us?
No, not oversight. However, it provides flexibility, and it makes it a little bit cheaper. Unfortunately, it makes it a little bit more administratively rigorous for our accountant, Louvassier. But he might have some bandwidth to be able to handle that small administrative.
Especially if we get him some new software soon.
Whatever.
I think we have another, and correct me if I'm wrong here, another control in that the general manager can't put something out to bid that we haven't put in the budget.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So there is a little bit of front-end control.
Okay.
And some rear-end control on it, absolutely.
If the board members are comfortable with it, then
Yeah.
I'm okay with it. And
And
I would move that we adopt ordinance 042013 by title only and waive further reading. Yes? Is that right that time?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 And in this case, it was pretty administrative, so I wouldn't call for a roll call vote. In this case, any future agenda items that a board member would like to bring up before we adjourn to closed session?
Did we have something about creating a finance committee for our reserves?
Yes.
That was supposed to
Yeah,
be coming
at
back?
one time, there was a suggested thing that we have a permanent finance committee.
Oh, that's right, it wasn't even going to be ad hoc.
And that was suggested, whether that needs to be an agenda item or not.
I think we have to create a committee by motion, right?
Yes.
So it has to be on the agenda, right?
Yeah, my only thoughts, and, is since we have so much going on right now, would it be a good idea to possibly wait till October, September, October-ish or so?
That's fine, I just wanted to make sure that it doesn't drop off
If
the
the board's
radar.
okay with that.
Seeing no additional agenda items, we'll adjourn to closed session.
We have close.
We have closed session.
I got to get the connection fee, so I can't really do anything else.